Hey guys, welcome back to Resistance Chicks. We are your hosts, Leah and Michelle. Today is Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth.
It's the 19th of June, 2020. Leah keeps telling me we have an excellent, really great show for you today, packed full of all sorts of things. Now, when I say things...
That's so descriptive.
It is very descriptive. You actually had me put a lot of descriptions in the thumbnail. CHAZ defunding the police. You're going to bring us some stuff from Dr. Vodi Bakum. Bakum, did I say that right?
I am really excited, and I'm just hoping that we can get a good flow here because if you guys don't follow us on Twitter and you don't follow us on Facebook, you should, because I'm going to pretty much do a roundup of all that information that I've been sharing all week. Too bad that we weren't able to. We have jobs and things we have to do around our own house, so we haven't been able to. So much breaking news coming to you. Rashard Brooks was a black man killed in a Wendy's, outside of a Wendy's, and that's the story that's going around. But there's a lot more to this story, and the punchline that I really want to come out strong with, and that we're going to go over this entire show, is that the BLM organization and the movement, the underpinnings, is Marxist. It's not just even cultural Marxism. They have come out to say that they are trained Marxists. And if you want to play that video for them, find the trained Marxist videos on my Facebook.
I got it up right now.
And play that for them. And we'll play that a couple times.
Let's play it right now while you're talking about it. Because
right.
usually when you ask me to play a video, then we don't get back to it.
This is the co-founder of the BLM website. Let me explain
Not
something
just the website,
you.
it's the official
movement. Black Lives Matter. So when we say, and we unequivocally say 1,000 times over, Black lives matter. They are valuable. Everybody matters.
But we can't align ourselves with this movement because they are extremists, and it has nothing to do with Black lives.
Yeah.
All right, so let's hear what she has to say. I think her name is Patrice Colorum, I think.
I also think that it might, I think of a lot of things. The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on sort of ideological theories, and I think that what we really try to do is build a movement that could be utilized by many, many Black folk.
So we'll just play that one more time.
I also think that it might, I think of a lot of things. The first thing I think is that we actually do have an ideological frame. Myself and Alicia in particular are trained organizers. We are trained Marxists. We are super versed on sort of ideological theories, and I think that what we really try to do is build a movement that could be utilized by many, many Black folk.
Stop. Full stop. Now, in case this woman doesn't know, Karl Marx was a Caucasian. Okay? He don't care about your life. He doesn't care about Black lives. Now, what is Marxism? Where did she go to school? Did she go to the Bolshevik Revolutionary School? Did she go to the Chairman Mao Revolutionary School? Did she go to the North Korean school on how to be a trained Marxist? I mean, you guys, this is going to be a short primer to the words and these theories that fuel the movement that we're seeing today. Okay? Co-opting, literally riding the waves. Black guy gets shot, we're going forward with our cultural Marxist revolution. Okay? Or black guys killed. Okay? By the cops. That's their end to this whole shebang. And Christians especially are waking up, but not awake yet, because they have muddled these things, injustices. We have had racism in this country. We have had many horrible things throughout history. And when you entwine these, what you're saying is, if you don't follow my definitions, if you don't believe in what I believe,
right,
then you are a racist. Now, Vodi Bakum. I have heard of him before. I've seen him before, but I've watched, and everybody needs to watch.
I have the one you shared on Facebook up here.
Please put the links. He's got 3-hour-long videos, pretty much, on something that he calls ethnic Gnosticism, which is basically using ethnicities as like a religion.
Do you want me to play that right here?
No, I don't, because I got to skip. So I want you to take these: ethnic Gnosticism, cultural Marxism, and social justice. And please put these links, because I'd love to sit here with you guys for 3 hours and listen to Vodi Bachman, but I think it'd be more beneficial for you if I kind of went over it. You guys you're doing dishes, play them in the background, which is what I did, to kind of get an understanding. Now, understanding Vodi Bachman is a black man who grew up in South LA in the ghetto to a single mom, teenage mom, and he now has 2 doctorates. He went to Oxford in England, and when he talks about the social justice, when he talks about even what the church is trying to do right now to bring in more, to even the white evangelical church trying to bring in black people, but he says things like this: but how come the black church isn't up at night trying to figure out how to get white people in? And this is my interesting take. Black people are 13% of the population. So you would think that if we are both, if all ethnicities are trying to be interracial, that most churches would be predominantly white. 70, if you're trying to be exactly right, you're going to be 77% white. Right? But wait. 77 plus 13. But no, you're right, because then there's Mexican.
That's 90% anyway. 77 and 13 is 90%.
Whatever.
But what you meant was I don't know what the percentage of white people is, but it is the predominant race, at least here in the United States. And so what Leah...
I don't know. You got Mexican people. I'm just throwing it out there. Don't mess with the numbers exactly. You're going to have majority white people. Okay? Whatever. Okay? And honestly, that's the kind of stuff that happens on Twitter, on Facebook. And then people will throw you out because you got your numbers wrong or something like that. You're canceled. You're done. You're a racist.
You're a racist because you can't do math.
Well, no, they just throw you out. This is the cancel culture that we have in social media.
So I read something today, not to interrupt here, but this is so great. When we're talking about cancel culture, I am really excited about cancel culture. And I think that we should cancel everything that has a history in racism, including
the Democrat Party.
The Democrat Party.
But
it's true.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
The fact that they want to cancel, they want to throw these monuments in rivers and tear them all down, and yet they literally align themselves and are members of the party of slavery.
Right.
If anything, you just got to get rid of the Democrat Party. At least give it a new name or something.
And that is something going around. Nancy Party, rename your party. Nancy Pelosi, rename your party. I think that should be a trending hashtag. What's happening is I literally have so many things going through my head at one time, and this is what happens when they're all trying to come out.
90%.
Whatever.
Which is kind of hard not to do, because it is cultural Marxism. But what I want to do is sort of put this in a context to help you understand why it's important, why this matters. currently in this discussion, in this debate, and I even hesitate to call it a debate, and I'll talk more about that as the weekend goes on. One of the reasons it's not really a debate is because there's a lot of name calling, right? People address the issue of social justice. Some topic comes up. One person says it's a social justice issue. The other person calls them a cultural Marxist, and then they turn around and call the person a racist, and that's about all the debate that you get.
Yep.
It's name calling, and things get short circuited because of the name calling, and often neither side is being completely honest, and we know it. Often the person who's looking at their brother and saying, you're just a cultural Marxist, doesn't necessarily mean that that's what the person is, even though they may believe that they're espousing some of the ideas that come from cultural Marxism. And generally the person who turns back and says, you're just a racist, knows better. But both sides recognize that that's a way to shut the other down. Because right now, these are not issues that are being debated. These are not issues that are being discussed. And in fact, in many instances, the mere act of debating and discussing these issues is considered to make you a cultural Marxist or a racist. On the one hand, if the one person says that this was an injustice and you turn around and want to debate and whether or not that was an injustice, and look at you, how dare you? I just told you that this was an injustice. How insensitive can you be to not acknowledge this injustice?
Pause it right there. I want you guys to understand that this video that Vody did was from 2019 in February. This is not relating to the latest events, but it's so pertinent.
Right, because they've been doing this.
Right.
And on the other hand, the other person who genuinely doesn't believe that an injustice has occurred is trying to point out why an injustice hasn't necessarily occurred here, and have a finger pointed at them and are called a racist, and they say, wait a minute, really? How long have we known each other? You know that's not who I am.
Right.
So one of the common themes in Vody's teaching is he grew up black community. He had one incident with the police who he was racially profiled by the police with his uncle and some cousins, and it kind of shaped his way of seeing things. He said that in college he was on all the black committees and all this and this, and he began to realize that if he wanted to fix and have real racial reconciliation, that he needed to be part of it, and he put himself and his family in a predominantly white church, and he has been moving in these circles, and he's been moving with these men of God, and he mentions in one of his videos the Promise Keepers movement, and if any of you were around in the 90s, it was one of those powerful movements. It was a lot of Caucasian, European descended, whatever, evangelicals. I just call them suburban and urban. It's so much easier that you don't have to look at color the same way, and without the stereotypes.
Sure.
And so we've got these suburban evangelicals who are like, we want to reach these people. How do we reach these people in the inner cities that they have more melanin in their skin than we do? What do we do? And Vody has gone into these churches, and the one thing that stuck out, and like if I were to message him, what I hear coming from him is that, well, the first thing he says in his video on
Ethnic Gnosticism,
he says, we don't need racial reconciliation. Jesus already reconciled not just all races. He says this perfectly. We are just one human race. Okay? And he goes through this whole thing where in Ephesians 2, where he talks about you who were far away from the cross, you have now come near unto the cross. And the biggest divide between all people in all times was actually created by God. Gentile and Jew.
Yeah.
You couldn't cross that. To get into the temple, only men could get there, and then the high priest. And in the Jewish temple, there were different courts. There was just a women's court, and women couldn't go where the men could go. And outside of that, you had the proselytes, who were converts, gentle converts. So like Jewish women could go closer than Gentile converts. Okay. And to say that Jesus, the greatest division, it was God himself. He divided the people. Mm-hmm. He divided Jew and Gentile. Okay? And when Jesus died, he tore down that veil and he reconciled all of humanity in one. And we're not just one race. We are, as Christians, one body. And so for those of you who are atheists, this is actually a really good argument for Christianity, okay? And for those of you who are Christians, this is who Vodi is speaking to most of the time. If you're going to reach somebody with the gospel, one of the parts of the gospel is that we are all created in the image of God. We are all sinners. We are all separated from God. You want to talk about elites and non-elites? Elites are those who are in Christ. And this is what I want to say to everyone in any ethnic community. Okay? Your position in life is elevated when you come to know Christ. But the catch is this. The greatest amongst you
must be the servant
of all. That is why Jesus washed their feet, okay? Because being a foot washer, back then when they were wearing sandals, they had dust in their feet all the time. If you ever had dust or sand in your feet, you had to wash your feet all the time. And so you might have a servant who washes your feet. You're going to be the lowest of low. And he says, the greatest amongst you must have a servant's heart. Okay? And so if you want to be great in the kingdom of God, you actually you make yourself humble. You humble yourself. And so one of the things, I know it's not going to come out right, but I was outside today and I was thinking about racism. And the thought that came to me, and racism is a sin. Racism isn't the sin. Racism is a symptom of the sin. Okay? So, if you're bleeding, what's the symptom? How are you bleeding? Where did it come from? How are we going to fix it? Okay? You can't just say, I'm bleeding. Show me where you're bleeding, right? Where is it coming from? Racism is a symptom of something corrupt inside of one's heart, and I'm guaranteeing you something. That's why I'm saying that racism isn't the sin, that racism is a symptom of sin.
That's good.
Okay? Because if you're racist, you are in pride. You're just in pride. And so whenever you're around anyone, you're in pride. And the best example I could give to you is this. My grandma, Southern Belle, stole my grandfather, had an affair from my other grandmother who had 4 kids with my grandfather. She comes up. I think she's the bee's knees. She's really great. My parents get married, and we go spend all this time with Grandma Mammal. And she takes us all these, fancy stores. We had these great breakfasts, and she takes us out to dinner. This is like 1 year of my life before my parents ended up getting divorced, like 2 or 3. I don't know. I guess it was 3 years.
You were 5.
3 years of my life, it seemed like, that she really did all this stuff for us. And then my parents get divorced. And suddenly, everything changes. I never go to my grandmother's house ever again to stay the night. She never, ever takes me anywhere again. She never, ever takes me out to eat. My grandmother literally, she gave me a birthday present and a Christmas present. But she disowned me. She disowned you too, by the way. And my half-brother was living with her, and he would come, and she filled him with this hate. And he would say, you and your mom are white trash. Well, she's white. I'm white. Suddenly I'm white trash. Well, guess what? That's like being called the N-word. Okay? Guys, maybe she was racist. I don't know. She's from the South. Maybe she didn't like black people. She was in pride. She was in arrogance. She was just, to me, you have to understand, there's no such thing necessarily as white supremacy or black supremacy. In God's eyes, it's just supremacy.
Yeah, pride.
It's just pride, okay? And so I wanted to explain this. There's something going on in my head. So I was like, play your video. This is so important to me to get across to everyone that there are two major things that God said. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Okay? If you are looking at somebody for the color of their skin or their ethnicity or whatever, you don't love God with all your heart, and you don't love your neighbor as yourself. Okay? We have a sin problem. And what's happening is the devil is flipping everything around and telling people that don't have a sin problem. And atheists and agnostics and cultural Marxists are telling Christians that they have a sin problem. When they probably don't. And that is where all this cultural Marxism comes up, this new canon and this new religion.
And so we end up just sort of not addressing the issues.
Okay, I'm over here.
Pause right there. Kelly, her stepdad passed away today, and she's on the phone with family right now. So, Kelly, our prayers are with you because that's really, really
I'm so sorry
heartbreaking.
about
I am not a social justice warrior. I am not an advocate of intersectionality. I'm not even an advocate of systemic racism theory, and it is a theory. I'm not an advocate of those things.
So he goes on to explain, and I don't have time to do this. These are words you need to understand. They're going to go right over your head. Foop. Intersectionality is at the basis, okay, of what we're seeing with the cancel culture on the Twitter mobs and us even talking to you right now with the fear of being taken off of the internet, okay? This intersectionality is a theory, okay, that is based in this cultural Marxism, which comes from the idea that there is one higher group of people that is white, cisgender, heterosexual, able-bodied men, and everything else stems down away from that. Even women who are actually in the majority, they are considered a minority, okay? And if you're considered a minority, no matter where you're at, you find yourself in this intersectionality of disability. You can show them those. Go ahead.
That's why I pulled it up.
Just you can bring them all up.
Well, I gotta
Okay.
share the screen here.
This is so important because this is what you're hearing about with the gender identities and with people having you do some sort of like survey to see where how much it's privilege versus non-privilege.
So
okay,
this one looks pretty overlapping or intersecting social identities and related systems of oppression, domination, or discrimination.
So what you see here is age, race, gender, class, religion, and then outside you got sexuality, education, language, heritage, history, ethnicity. So if everybody at the top are white, Christian, you can leave that up for a second. White, Christian, straight men are at the top, and everybody else is on the spectrum. It's like autism.
Yeah.
They're on the spectrum. So women, white women, you're on the spectrum. White women who aren't Christians, or who may be Muslim, or some other, or Buddhist, or whatever, you're on the spectrum. If you are not white, let's say you're a man. You're a male homosexual.
It's kind of like...
Let's say you're a white male homosexual.
I wish they used this, the way that I understand it, the way that you explained it to me earlier, it was almost like a point system.
It is.
Okay?
It is.
So, white males have 0 points. Okay?
Right. Can you bring that one up? Maybe
A homosexual male would then give you a point.
Right.
Okay?
Maybe that one.
This one?
Yeah.
A homosexual male that is a Muslim would get 2 points. Okay? A homosexual male with a disability that was Muslim would get 3 points.
Right.
Okay? So that's what we're talking about here.
And in that's your level of being oppressed.
Right. Your oppression level, like, number.
This is a theory. Because as he points out in his video later on, you could grow up so poor from Appalachia and be white. Dirt poor. I mean, dirt floor poor. And Colin Powell's kids grow up completely privileged. But they deserve that privilege because they were on the spectrum. They were black. Okay? But if you are not on the spectrum, if you are a white Christian male, you owe to the world, and the idea of the cultural Marxism and social justice. And he goes on to talk about this in his social justice thing. Even Christians, the idea is to take from the haves and to give to the have-nots, because if you have and you are not on the spectrum, then you shouldn't have. And the idea of cultural Marxism is Karl Marx did not see the fall of capitalism that he thought he would see. And his theories were mostly economic and wanted the redistribution of wealth. Mostly because Karl Marx is lazy. And why am I talking about this? Because right now there are riots in the streets, cops are getting killed, businesses are being torn down, and everybody on social media is hammering everybody, telling them to take the knee, and corporations all over are having to send out, give money to the Black Lives Matter, and they're taking it all the way to a Marxist bank. Okay? This is what they believe in, and they believe in using force to get things done. Okay? And so when the women say, we are trained Marxists, well, Marxists know how to lie, they know how to subvert, they know how to get into institutions.
Well, I love how she said we're trained organizers.
And so organizers, these riots are not spontaneous. What they do is they go in and they get a bunch of straw and wood and they light it on fire. And they say it's because of social justice. They say it's because... but you and me, we want social justice. We want all kinds of justice because justice rains down from heaven.
Right.
And this is exactly what Bodhi is saying, okay? Justice is something we all should go for. But when they say social justice, they're talking about economic redistribution of wealth.
Right.
Okay?
Which is interesting because they include all of these things. Disabilities, the way you look, your gender versus your sexuality, all of these things that have nothing to do with money.
Right.
And they all come down to the fact that we can solve it all with money. So if we throw enough money at the trans community, if we throw enough money at the black community, if we throw enough money at disabled people, if we throw enough money, that will solve the problem, which they are claiming, and they know if it does exist to the extent that they say that it does, is a heart problem, and you can't solve a heart problem with dollar bills.
Right. And I'm going to go back to the other video, but I'm going to go here for a second to define social justice. We watched the whole thing. But at the end, he talks about Christians, and there's a worldwide major Christian organization whose goal, they say, is social justice.
Identifying gays and gay people as aggrieved minorities and hitching their wagon to the civil rights / social justice movement, so that the idea of being anti-gay is equivalent to the idea of being a member of the KKK.
And that is a really strong clip there. Because when it comes to all these things, if you're against transgender, what they've done, and I'm going to talk to you guys about 2 Supreme Court justice rulings this week, and how scary one of them is, because we had even Neil Gorsuch side on the liberal side in going to this 1964 civil rights bill, non-discriminating people on the basis of the color of their skin. And the Supreme Court just ruled, and I don't want you to get upset about this because it is upsetting, but we're going to turn it around because God is big, right? But this was really bad in general. In general, if there is no God, but if there's no God, whatever. They ruled that your chosen gender, who you say you are, is now equivalent to what color or race you are born as, and you can't discriminate against people based on what gender they choose today or tomorrow or the next day. I can't believe Neil Gorsuch went along with this. Thank God we have a dissenting opinions for this. But to know that, I think it was Clarence Thomas who wrote a powerful dissent to this. I'm going to read it to you guys. what they are equivalating with doing that is equivalating, because people who discriminate against black people would be KKK, right? If you discriminate, if you don't hire a transgender into your church or into your school, then you are equivalent to a KKK member in your ideology.
Mike Adams threw a little wrench in this, spoke, and that's why I want to offer it up to give you a little bit of hope, because where this ends is that now I can claim myself to be a libertarian female, right? And I can make up my own gender. And as long as my ideology is equal to my gender, then I can't be discriminated against. So if YouTube tries to take our channel off for some reason, then I can cite this as and you have now discriminated against my channel because of my libertarian female gender. Okay, so what they have done is they've just given everybody a get out of jail free card when it comes to censorship, because all we have to do is say, well, you're discriminating against me because of my libertarian female gender that I am, right? So so that's, if once it gets to that point, and it will get to that point, it blows up and they can't use it anymore.
What about other issues? Because there are other issues. One, environmentalism and climate change is a social justice issue. And according to most people, it is the #1 social justice issue. Because, I don't know if you realize this or not, climate change primarily affects minorities. Don't ask me to explain, I'm just telling you. Income inequality, global inequality. So you've heard about white privilege, right? But the same article basically puts American privilege on par with white privilege.
And so then he goes on to say, how are they going to redistribute wealth?
Right.
Climate change. That's how they're using these. I'm exposing, and he does it, and he's exposing their system, the ideology. Let me see if I can back up where he was talking about the church organization here. Hang on.
Bombard them through the media, bombard them through television, bombard them through movies, bombard them through the educational system to where it's just normalized. And here's what's interesting. We've lived in Zambia now for the last 3.5 years, and I come back 3 or 4 times a year. The family is here. We're on a 2-month furlough, and I've been getting my football fix, the playoffs are going on, and I've been getting some other stuff like that. We just, don't even, when I was here, maybe not. Now that I can't do it, man, I need it. So anyway, I'm watching and I'm noticing a number of things. I'm noticing that there are a couple of commercials that I'm seeing, a couple of companies that are running commercials. And I keep seeing these commercials over and over again. One of them is a company that is promoting the sale of jewelry, right? And for special occasions. And there's vignettes of various couples. And in every one of their commercials, there's at least one vignette of a same-sex couple.
So what he goes on to say, and it's earlier in the Cultural Marxism video, he talks about the Frankfurt School and how in order to get in, the idea was we're being oppressed because the people in the higher ups. So our job is to change people through media. Bombard them. If you are not pro-homosexual, that's why you see so many homosexuals in the media. Hit them over and over and over again until he said, until they gag you and they get you to stop saying anything. Right. They get you to stop. They get you to just back up in a corner. Right. Okay. And I'm really trying to find the part. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I just wanted to read a couple of comments. You could put these in if you wanted to try and find what you wanted while I read some comments here. That would probably
it's
be
like putting hot water in the front of your bathtub and saying you don't want the back to heat up.
Let's see.
Majority,
if it works there, it should work for you. So Robin Poe says, I think I know someone who transgendered, and I think he did it partially to get special favors at his or her job.
It is reasonable.
Because earlier, the comment that I was looking for earlier that she said, do you think that some people just claim to be transgender to earn extra points on this intersectionality kind of scale and on the social justice scale? And I absolutely agree with that. I think you're right there. And then earlier, Britt Baza was pointing out that the BLM is funded by George Soros and the Clinton Foundation, and I can't find that comment, even though I saw you left it a couple of times here, Barry. Sorry about that. Oh, here it is. Barack Obama and George Soros Open Society Foundation trace back the funding model on Google, which is, yeah, I mean, it's they have an agenda specifically. We're just all.
It's not working. It's that my headphones are not working.
I don't know why they're not working. That's weird.
Okay, so let me just go. Just watch the video, and I'm sorry that this particular one I didn't have timed up.
Yelling.
I'm sorry. I have to talk. This is the level that I talk. This is my gender. This is my voiceal gender. Okay, I'm sorry.
Dale says, so if I claim to be transgender, I cannot be banned from the channel. Hopefully.
So there's a Christian organization, and at their top of the things that they have won is going after Hobby Lobby. Hobby Lobby? What do you mean? You're social justice Christians and you're going after Hobby Lobby? Hello. And it lists all of these really secular things attacking Christians.
Yeah.
And so that goes back to when you see the social justice, you see the intersectionality, you see the cultural Marxism, and the cultural Marxism in the church today, right now. And we have to fight it. We have to expose it. What I'm so excited about is that it is exposing itself. When you have the Black Lives Matter people take off the mask and say, hello, cultural Marxism doesn't say we're cultural Marxists. Okay? Cultural Marxism espouses these ideals of intersectionality, that there's one dominant race and they can never be hurt, and you must listen to the stories of all other people. Okay? This is satanic and it's wrong. Okay. Let me see if I can find one more thing here.
Jim West says, you can't be anti-racist if you don't support BLM, anti-fascist if you don't support Antifa, but never heard of them worrying about conservatives not supporting the GOP. LOL. Don't Be Stupid says, I can add, many of them work for Roman Catholic and the globalists.
So we go back to the video that I do actually have timestamps on.
Been some.
Oh, that's not the one. Very much. Okay.
But I don't believe that everyone who is an advocate of those things is necessarily a Marxist.
Let's see.
Guess what? There's too many police officers who've been killed by citizens.
Let me go back here. Wait a minute.
These are real issues. And enough already with the people who are saying, well, you just use terminology like cultural Marxism. You just use these words like this so that you don't have to address these real issues. Nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth. There are too many people who've been killed by police officers. Guess what? There's too many police officers who've been killed by citizens. That's a problem. We have serious problems in immigration that demand not only political solutions, but also present an opportunity for those of us who love the gospel and want the gospel to be preached to every nation. Amen, somebody. There are far too many educational opportunities, too many educational resources in this country for so many people to have so poor an education.
And what he goes on to say is he's talking about this, and this is what we talk about hopefully on our show. We don't lean left. We don't lean right. We lean on the Word of God.
Yeah.
And the problem is that the social justice warriors, what they've done is they hijack issues like horrible inner city education. And they say the only answer, though, is, well, it's racism. It's based on racism. And it's just racist white people's fault. And more money into the school systems.
Instead of school choice.
And as soon as you and I sit down and talk about things like, hey, let's work on the issues of school choice, or let's work on getting people better education. He homeschools his kids. They shut you down. They don't want, and here's the thing. You can't have a conversation with people who don't want to talk about the issues, who just want to hurl insults. But the one thing he pointed out, and it was a challenge to me, and it's a challenge to you, that it's the Michelle Obama. When they go low, we go high. As Christians, we must be patient. We must constantly be looking for a door of opportunity. We must constantly be looking for a door to have a conversation, to talk about these issues, and to make the actual change that needs to happen. The devil wants to keep people sick and in trouble, but God wants to heal people. There's a couple more on this video that we're going to move on. I don't know why this keeps going down to the bottom. Okay, 49.
That's good.
He does a lot of pauses.
What's the end result of
There's
that?
an effect there.
The end result of that is you don't engage. You don't discuss. You don't interact. Because here's what you learn. Whatever your answer is, if it doesn't line up with what the cultural Marxist says it ought to be, or what the person who is borrowing the ideology of the cultural Marxist says it ought to be, or the person who is unwittingly falling prey to the cultural Marxism that all of us have been saturated in wants it to be, then you're wrong. And you're a racist. Or, in my case,
There's no way out.
a sellout who's trying to curry favor with white people. Why is this important? I'll leave you with this. Here's why it's important. It's important because this is an agenda, not just an idea. It's a disruptive, transformative agenda. That's number one. And it's an agenda that needs to be recognized and an agenda that needs to be confronted. Here's the second problem. And to me, this is the sinister part of the problem.
So he comes in the beginning of this video, and I'm sorry, I thought I had it teed up there. He says, when Barack Obama was elected, he went on to CNN, and he's never been back on, because he said Barack Obama was one of the most dangerous presidents ever, because he is a cultural Marxist. And he said, mark my words, race relations in America will get worse under Barack Obama, because cultural Marxism separates people on race, age, religion, and it causes people to get angry at each other and to hate each other. Cultural Marxism is not your friend. Cultural Marxism is what you see with the Black Lives Matter
Well, it's interesting.
organization.
When you go to CHAZ, CHOP, whatever, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, in their city, one of the things that they asked for was segregated care, like in hospitals and stuff like that. They want segregation. And so for most of us, we understand race issues as we all should come together and be unified
treated equally.
but the underpinnings of this movement of Black Lives Matter, they want to divide. They do not want to join together. They do not want peace. They do not want unity.
Let me tell you why. Because when you don't just say Joe Biden's up in the polls, you say the redneck in South Carolina people, or the black people who like Indian food, and then they have to divide everybody, and you have then become. You are part of something that they can manipulate and that they can control.
What you meant there, and I was a little bit confused in case anybody else was, you don't just say Biden's up in the polls and that's good enough. They have to subdivide where he's up in the polls amongst these specific
groups.
Yes.
The sinister part of the problem is that the end result of this agenda is real pain, real sin, real brokenness that doesn't get addressed. Let me explain. As someone who grew up in drug-infested, gang-infested South LA,
You're in the headway. There it is.
the son of a single teenage mother, I look at the Mike Brown situation and I want to say to all of the young black boys like him, who were young black boys like me, we can't live like that. To all of the fathers who are not there, to the tune of nearly 75% among black children, what I want to say is we have a problem that needs to be addressed. We can't live like this. We have to deal with this. There is brokenness here that has to be addressed. There's brokenness that has to be fixed. But the way things stand now, to say that is to blame the victim. Do you know what that means? That means that whatever pathologies there are that need to be addressed don't get addressed.
And so you're stuck in a cycle of people being hurt and people being abused over and over again. Let me try to come back.
Systems. How do you fix that?
Fine. He talks about Mike Brown here. It is really important.
Now, instead of a preacher, you've become a politician.
Sure, see.
Because the only way to fix that one is to change the hegemony.
Okay, his whole thing on this is the hegemony. Hegemony meaning white guys at the top. Okay? They don't want, the idea isn't social justice. People don't get fixed. The only time they'll be happy is when there's no more white men. And everything's flipped. But you're not going to have that in a majority European-centric country. And so it's constant battle, constant arguing, constant. You can't appease these people by getting on your knees. Okay? It's the power structure. And he kept talking about in this video, and you guys have to watch it.
So I want to say something really quick, and I'm going to
finish one sentence.
Okay.
The one thing AOC said, and I'm sorry I don't have all these videos up. She was talking about companies. And it clicked in right in here with he's talking about they wanted the power. They want the power. They want to be in the seats of justice. Mm-hmm. They want to be in all, they want the power. They feel like, these people, they shouldn't get the power. Because they think that with the power you can control people. And AOC said this, I don't want your company. I want your power. Do you understand what she means when she says that? Mm-hmm. I want your power. And she's saying that the same cultural Marxism, bing, 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 behind the Black Lives Matter movement, behind the cultural Marxism, that she is a cultural Marxist.
So there's a TV show from a long time ago that I'm not going to mention because, you literally, not only will you get canceled, you get taken off. You mentioned it to try to relate this. Maybe you guys can make the connection without me bringing it up. But this is what I want to say. When you take something that is wrong to do, whether it's enslaving somebody or treating them badly or having more power over them.
Right.
And instead of just trying to stop that and equal the playing field, when you flip it, and then you want to be the captor, you want to have slaves, you want to be in control, then you are every bit as equally as evil as this thing that you are denouncing. Okay? Sorry. Now, so my point is, I don't know, it's really weird. You can just bring it up and maybe go to the headphones. There you go. Click on that right there, and that should get you there. So what we have, and I don't put the name of the show in the chat if you guys know what I'm talking about. Just don't do it. You can literally get taken off forever for all that, because that's not the comparison that I'm trying to make. I'm trying to make the comparison of that's so weird that it's not connecting your earbuds. You don't just say, that's wrong, so I'm going to stop you from doing it to me, and then I'm going to do it to you. Okay? It's still evil. It's still wrong, right? So that's what I want you guys to understand, that the movement behind when AOC says, I want your power, no, I want to be equal. I want everyone to be equal. I don't want to have power over anyone but the devil. Okay? But these people, in Black Lives Matter, the movement that is these founders and the website and all that, they want power. They want to have power over the white man. Okay? Instead of just saying, why can't we all come together? So what Leah's saying, what Vodi Bakum has spent his career doing, is trying to unify the races.
So I'm not going to be able to find this one either. This is great, because you guys are going to love this. And I thought I for sure had it, but I just, it's hard to...
You said there was 3 different videos. Are you sure it wasn't in a different
No,
one?
it's in this one. He just mentioned it. He mentioned Mike Brown. Mike Brown. So what he goes on to talk about is... hands up, don't shoot never happened. Mike Brown was a 6'4", 300 some odd pound black man who reached his hand into a cop car to try to shoot the gun, and at that point, it's either I shoot you or you shoot me. And he said, but I had people calling up and telling me that I was on the wrong side of this because my guy, my person, my community member was killed by a cop. And he said, that's what he mentioned it. I want to tell kids so that Mike Brown doesn't happen. Okay? You don't reach your hand inside of a cop car and try to steal the gun and shoot the cop. Okay? And there were these riots over this. And it just was so powerful, but I'm not going to fight it. I got to move on. Guys, go watch all 3 of those videos.
It's Vodi with a V, and I do have the link to that specific video, and you should be able to find more by going there.
I played them all. You can put them on there. Black Lives Matter anti-cop protest, part of agenda-seeking socialist revolution. A nationwide push led by Black Lives Matter to defund the police is part of a larger radical agenda, spelled out on the group's own manifesto that openly seeks no less than a revolution to topple the United States capitalist system and its replacement with a socialist-style government replete with universal income, collective ownership, and the redistribution of wealth. Amid BLM's role in the protest movement, spotlighting serious and legitimate questions about George Floyd's death, it is instructive to review the BLM umbrella charter. And I'm going to go over this because it's so important, and you guys, so that you guys know this, and we've been over this, but you need to be armed, because it's going to come up with your family every single day. It's going to come up with people that you're talking to, and when you are armed with the truth, you'll be able to make a change. Okay, so they demand the abolishment of voter ID laws that protect against voter fraud and supports the anti-Semitic boycott, divestment, and sanctions, the BDS movement targeting Israel. It wants a lifetime free education for all black people, including undocumented and currently and formerly incarcerated people. Black people will never achieve liberation under the current radicalized capitalist system. Capitalist system. These are cultural Marxists. They want to undo capitalism because that's what Karl Marx wanted to do. But he was a namsy-pamsy. He couldn't do anything. He was a lazy, good-for-nothing. Why people follow him? I don't know. This is the devil.
But what about that guy on Tucker the other night that said, you know what's so interesting is all these anti-capitalist, liberal people or whatever on the left, they always seem to find themselves on the side of the biggest corporations.
I know.
Like Apple and Google,
Amazon.
It's like, are you really anti-capitalist,
No.
or are you all about just having
Nike,
the power?
Adidas.
They just want the power.
It's just power, guys. It's just power. The white supremacist, imperialistic, patriarchal systems need not reform but radical transformation. We must remake the current U.S. political system in order to create a real democracy where black people and all marginalized people can effectively exercise full political power.
I've said this before, and it bears repeating.
That's the Movement for Black Lives, the M4BL Vision for Policy platform.
I remember exactly where God spoke this to me, and we were on a dog walk at the top of a street called Wallace locally, and I said to Leah, there are 3 things that people in the world seek after. Money, fame, and power. In that order. And because money is actually not that difficult to acquire, okay, compared to a lot of things. Money you can get. People strive and seek after money. The next thing that is more difficult to achieve is fame. Because you have to be in the right place, you have to know the right people, and all this, that, and the other. It's difficult to gain fame.
And did you ever notice this that Vody points out? That the people in power at the top are the very people that you're supposedly toppling. The white supremacist nationalist people, white men born in America.
Right.
Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden.
Right.
Bill Clinton.
So the very last thing, the hardest to achieve, is power. And that's why people seek these things in that order. Because once you have money, then you want fame, and then you have to have power. It's a high. And that is the ladder rung that you climb to get there.
So the Chick-fil-A owner guy came out yesterday and said Christians need to identify, go with the whole, we are white supremacists, we have white privilege, and we need to go to our black people. And I'm not even going to show you the video. He gets down on his knees with a brush, and he supposedly cleans Lecrae's shoe.
Lecrae is a Christian black rapper.
And he said he got 1,500 of these for his employees to, wipe the shoes of black people who come into Chick-fil-A.
I thought you said it was shoe shining.
Shine their shoes. But you can't shine a gym shoe. What are you going to do?
And
he didn't give them a shoe polish thing. Because
nobody don't wear those kinds of shoes.
You're not going to shine a gym shoe, Michelle.
Right. So it's literally just
So the Babylon Bee satire site, which is not satire anymore, it's real. Chick-fil-A now open on Sunday, but only for black people. Chick-fil-A announced yesterday that its fast food restaurant will be ending its long-standing policy on Sunday closure, but only for black people. We are leading the way towards racial reconciliation in this country, and everybody knows the best way to achieve racial reconciliation is to segregate black people, make them feel awkward as awkward as possible. Chick-fil-A is dedicated to providing the blacks with a safe space so they can be properly honored. Chick-fil-A will be providing racial justice training for all its employees. Sunday employees will be required to wear traditional African kente cloths as they serve food in the dining room. They will also offer to shine customers' sneakers for free as they eat. Most notably, there will be a change to the traditional polite phrase uttered by every Chick-fil-A employee after their sacrificial acts of loving kindness. When addressing white people, workers will say, "My pleasure," and when addressing people of color, they will now say, "My privilege," while kneeling respectfully. Further changes will be seen during the rest of the week as well. Dining rooms will be rearranged to provide a separate place of honor for minorities to sit. They will also be provided with separate bathrooms and drinking fountains. Chick-fil-A leadership insists that this new separate but more equal policy will make their restaurants bright, shining beacons of racial reconciliation for the world to emulate. Chick-fil-A will always be a kind of welcoming place for the blacks, the Chinamen, and those who wear the red dot on their foreheads. Just please don't steal the sauces and we're cool. But even if you do steal the sauces, that's okay too. We will honor you. Kathy also apologized for serving white meat and promised more diversity in the future.
Oh my gosh. And their satire really... Segregation, Robin Poe, you stole the word out of my mouth. They want segregation. They do want this division. Why? Because it's satanic. I don't have to put a label on it other than it is just satanic. And so through their efforts here, they are achieving, right, the very thing that they are said to be fighting.
So this is where something we can all get behind. Today is June 19th. And there's a new holiday that people want to make a federal holiday, and I'm actually 100% behind this. Let me explain something to you. I actually think that I honestly think that January 1st, January 1st should be a national holiday, but whatever. For the Emancipation Proclamation issued by President Abraham Lincoln on January 1st, 1863, had established that all enslaved people in the Confederate States in rebellion against the Union shall thenceforth and forever be free. But in reality, the Emancipation Proclamation didn't instantly free the enslaved people. The proclamation only applied to places under Confederate control and not to slave-holding border states or rebel areas already under Union control. However, as Northern troops advanced into the Confederate South, many enslaved people fled behind the Union lines. In Texas, slavery had continued as the state experienced no large-scale fighting or significant presence of Union troops. Many enslavers from outside the Lone Star State had moved there as they viewed it as a safe haven for slavery. After the war came to a close in the spring of 1865, General Granger's arrival in Galveston that June signaled freedom for Texas's 250,000 enslaved people. Although emancipation didn't happen overnight for everyone, in some cases enslavers withheld the information until after harvest season, celebrations broke out among newly freed black people, and Juneteenth was born. That December, slavery in America was formally abolished with the adoption of the 13th Amendment. The following year, 1865, freedmen in Texas organized the first of what became the annual celebration of Jubilee Day.
Amen.
And that would be a Christian holiday. Jubilee. On June 19th. In the ensuing decades, Juneteenth commemorations featured music, barbecues, prayer services, and other activities. As the black people migrated from Texas to other parts of the country, the Juneteenth tradition spread. In 1979, Texas became the first state to make Juneteenth an official holiday. Today, 47 states recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday, while efforts to make it national have so far stalled. I think we could all definitely get behind this Juneteenth celebration. What it does is it celebrates that people actually cared enough to go into the Union state of Texas and say, free your daggum slaves, man.
It was a Confederate state.
No, it wasn't. I was saying a Union rebel state. This was Union state.
Oh, really? I thought
That's
it was
what it just
Confederate
said.
state.
Or well, it was a rebel state. It wasn't really part of anything, but so the Union went in.
Right.
That's
the
what
Union
you
went
did. Did you just
in.
read
It wasn't
me?
a Union state, though.
Didn't you just read it though?
Yeah, but
it said
you just said a Union state.
I think it was
Well, they were all part of the Union, okay, but
a Union rebel state, but it wasn't Confederate.
okay,
That's why the
Okay.
slave owners in the South went there.
okay.
Begin this hour, and from the
Oh,
pictures
wait.
across the country, the turnout so far.
That's on. You just have it on the earbud thing. You need to just connect.
Today, I spoke with Dr. Ben Carson, Secretary for HUD, Housing and Urban Development, as he was today
Hang on.
earlier in the floor.
I'm gonna hear. We want to hear. What's it called here? Talk about Juneteenth. Ben Carson.
Secretary Carson, thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
Would you support making today a national holiday?
Yes, I think to commemorate the emancipation of slaves is a wonderful thing, providing freedom in our country, but also celebrating the hundreds of thousands of people who were of multiple different ethnicities who gave their lives in order that we could achieve that freedom in this country. It's a very significant forward step.
I wanted to ask you that, and I wasn't quite sure your answer, and I wasn't quite sure how you would answer this either. Senator Tim Scott said earlier in the week, he said, I don't know how to tell people the nation is not racist. I'll say it again, we're not a racist country. We deal with racism because there is racism in the country. Both are true, not mutually exclusive. Can you understand why he would say that?
I totally understand that. People want to ascribe racism throughout our system so that they can say we need to change our system. Our system is an excellent system which has provided opportunities for all kinds of people and provided, the highest level of living for anybody in the world. But are there defective people? Are there people who have hatred in their hearts? Of course there are. We have not reached nirvana yet.
Come back to the first question. Nancy Pelosi removed a few portraits of former speakers from the Capitol just yesterday. There's a push to remove several statues as well in the Capitol. And it goes on. Columbus, Ohio has decided just yesterday to remove the statue of Columbus. There's a push in New York City Council here to remove the statue of Thomas Jefferson. And I guess, in summation, do you think this is necessary for an American cultural cleanse?
No, I don't think so. I think it's rather silly, quite frankly.
Silly.
You know, those who forget their history are bound to repeat the mistakes from their history. And, you know, what intelligent people do is they analyze their history, both the good things and the bad things, and they learn from those things, and they're able to advance. But if you try to hide them, what good does that do? It makes absolutely no sense.
Take the city of Atlanta, for example, where there's been a lot of unrest. The mayor's black. The DA is black. I believe 58% of the police force is African American. You've heard the phrase systemic racism. I don't know how you interpret that. Would you say the city of Atlanta is operating under that racism systemic, or would you say that is progress?
I would say that's tremendous progress. And, you know, many of the large cities in our country, you know, have blacks in the highest executive positions. So if there's systemic racism, then I guess it means that they're responsible for it. And I don't think that there is systemic racism, so I don't think they're responsible for it. But if you take the one, you got to take the other.
You're in Orlando for a very specific reason.
So he made a really good point there. We're going to talk about Atlanta here in a second. But this whole idea of systemic racism, meaning that the systems themselves are racist, and rather than they're just bad people in the country. I love to hear men like Ben Carson speak out and talk about things like this. So let me go on. Let me see. I've got a couple more. Here we go. So Antifa has joined itself with Black Lives Matter, and they have taken over Seattle. Now, in Portland, they decided to set up their own CHAZ.
Okay.
And it didn't go so well.
Oh, darn.
Yeah, I know. But the United Nations tweeted this out a few hours ago. The UN human rights experts expressed profound concern over a recent statement by the U.S. Attorney General describing Antifa and other anti-fascist activities as domestic terrorists, saying it undermines the rights to freedom of expression and of peaceful assembly in the country. And they tweeted out the Antifa flag. The UN. We're done at UN. We're done with you. We're done with you. Can you believe that?
I actually can believe it, yes.
All right. I'm just going to play this here without any intro.
Listen, just because a white person speak their mind about this issue doesn't make them racist. They shouldn't have to sit here and close their mouth and not say anything because they feel like they're going to lose their job or get, ridiculed on Facebook and things like that. And police officers can't even do their job because they feel like, man, they're going to throw me in jail. No, one thing about Black Lives Matter, man, it wasn't the group that started this movement out here. It was the people that fought and the nations that fought. So the organization took credit for it. For me, my kids are half Asian and half white. So what category they fall in when people say all lives matter? You say, no, Black Lives Matter. Man, stop being so sensitive. And the thing about it is, until we have one organization for all people for basic human rights, instead of having multiple organizations that's in the pockets of these politicians, then we can make the true change because we're dividing each other into these organizations instead of the people.
Just real simple. Just real simple there. These organizations are making a ton of money off of Black Lives Matter.
Yep.
Okay? And it's political.
It is all political.
I got another video for you.
Hypocritical, virtue-signaling Democrat leaders of America. You took the time to kneel for George Floyd so you could pretend to care about black people, but I know the truth you continue to ignore. So now allow me to call you on the carpet for your many failures in the black community that you refuse to acknowledge. How about kneeling to acknowledge that the worst riots and the worst instances of police brutality in this country are in your cities alone? You are the common denominator. How about kneeling to apologize for having some of the lowest minority, literacy, and graduation rates, but some of the highest single motherhood, abortion, and black-on-black crime rates in your own districts that you yourselves represent? How about kneeling for the millions upon millions of black children who never got a chance to live because your friends over at Planned Parenthood butchered them before they even had a chance to be born? How How about kneeling for the untold numbers of my ancestors who were lynched by your former counterparts in the KKK for simply daring to ask to be treated as equals? They didn't get justice, and even today, by kneeling and apologizing for your white privilege, you still don't treat us as equals. You feel like you have to apologize for your privilege because deep down you still think that you're better than us by default. If you'd actually held your friend Amy Klobuchar accountable for not prosecuting Derek Chauvin when she had the chance to after he had 10 complaints filed against him in his 19 years with the Minneapolis police force, maybe George Floyd would still be alive. The fact of the matter is, if you had to take a knee for every black life lost needlessly due to your failed leadership, you would be on your knees forever. The only black lives that matter to you are the ones that fit your agenda. You know it, I know it, and the world knows it too. Your party is the one that filibustered for months to prevent the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Your party is the one that only had 23% support of the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, and had 0% support for the 14th Amendment, which granted freed slave citizenship, and also 0% support for the 15th Amendment, which gave us the right to vote. The policies you have implemented have been the figurative knees on the necks of my people for centuries. And it is because of you and your failed leadership that many of us still can't breathe today. But I've got news for every last one of you. If you think all you have to do is shamelessly pander and kneel to get the support of people like me, if you think you can wear the kente cloth of the Ashanti, an African tribe known for selling their own people into slavery, if you think you can tear down statues and rename buildings and roads to hide your sordid history from everyone, if you think that's all it takes to win over my people, if you think our skin color will keep us from thinking critically, you've got another thing coming. I'm Damani Felder, and that was absolutely nothing but common sense.
That's awesome.
You know, one of the things that Bodhi said, and I wish I could have had the clip up for you guys, where he talks about with the social justice and with racism, and a lot of people with like these microaggressions, you have a conversation with somebody and just slip up and just say one thing and you're canceled and you're racist, and they can say, well, that was racist, and you're like, and you could say, no, I really didn't mean it was racist, and they can say, no, I can read your mind and you don't know what you don't know, and I know what racism is and what you said was racist, and I know your intention.
Right.
So they put these social justice warriors at the top saying, I know. You could say that you're blue in the head, you didn't mean it was racist, and you're just a normal, it was just whatever. And you can't put a whole class of people in as mind readers.
Well, not only that, but what they're trying to say is they're not even calling people liars, right? Like, you're lying, you are a racist. What they're saying is you just don't know that you are a racist. And, like, everything that comes out of your mouth is racist. You could say the sky is blue, racist.
Right. So here's another little video of Soros goons tormenting a black police officer. It's a little TikTok video. What do you do when you go home and take off your uniform? He starts crying. And I just can't. I mean, I wanted to show that to you, but he starts crying. You're one of us. Why are you doing this? This is a result, I'm just going to tell you guys, public school education.
Yeah.
Cultural Marxists, the Frankfurt School, they go in, they rewrite their curriculum, they make it, they put all these little tiny little things in there, and it's demonic. You say, how could somebody 100 years ago foresee this? Well, they didn't think it was going to take 100 years. They've been waiting for an anti-capitalist revolution to destroy America. The idea, the cultural Marxists, even the Bolsheviks were like, well, we're going to get our people in. And the Russians are like, well, we're on our way out. And they're like, well, I'm really sorry that I dropped some guys off over there. And we dropped off some ideals. We can't rescind them now that we don't have communism.
This girl, this co-founder, say that they were black Bolsheviks?
No. She said that we're just trained Marxists. Here's the Candace Owens here with, what's his name?
Unfortunately, as a race, we have to recognize that all our enemy is not always another color. Matter of fact, most cases it's not another color. Particularly in this country. In this country, people of all colors, all races, all religions want to help the underdog. Now, we should get past thinking ourselves as underdogs, and that's the difference in our generation and my dad's generation. They never saw themselves as underdogs. They saw themselves as victors. they saw themselves in their own communities making things happen, where they would build businesses and do whatever they had to do to make things work.
Yeah, my granddad owned his own business, and he grew up on a sharecropping farm, and he got off that sharecropping farm, and he started cleaning households. He moved up north, started cleaning households, and he would tell me the stories of, of how disgusting, the first place that he moved into was, and how he had to knock and basically beg for them to be able to pay rent, because it was a time where white people didn't want him and my grandmother living in their basements. And when he tells me these stories of going from a maintenance man to then starting his own business, he owned a dry cleaning business. He did that in a time where there actually was racial discrimination. And now you find black Americans, so many of them at the forefront telling us that we can't because of the color of our skin.
And that is so important. And I think that the Democrats, they keep everybody separated because they're like, well, we'll be your savior.
Exactly.
Vote us in and we will take care of the horrible other white people, which they just mean evangelical Christians. And here we have as Judge Joe Brown about real Donald Trump.
Is Trump a racist? I don't think so. I've talked to a number of black entrepreneurs who back in the late 80s and 90s, early 90s, were trying to get financing. They couldn't. Somebody told them to go check with Donald Trump. So they come back and tell me they got a loan from Donald Trump. He gave them a term loan. Show up with the interest and the principal, one check. But they had to go see him personally. They independently relate this tale that when they saw him, he said, "This is what you're supposed to pay me? This our agreement?" And yeah. And then tore the check up, shook their hands, and congratulations. Now run your business. And this was when? This was back in the 90s. And most people don't even know this. He had a sister. He was, every time you saw him back in the 90s, fine paper bag, brown, beautiful black model. He likes fine women. He didn't have any problem with dating a black woman, walking her down red carpets. So, I mean, she says he's not a racist. He just doesn't like many people, black or white. And he appreciates people who do stuff within their lane. Well, not stay in their lane, but where they choose to be. If they do it well, he admires them. Black, white, brown, red, yellow. Most people don't know this. He was the finance man behind Jesse Jackson's 2 runs for president.
I can't even.
These are things like they never tell you. Ever, ever, ever.
But what's fascinating to me is that, no, they never tell you, but Trump never uses them.
I know.
He never, ever uses them. And it reminds me of Thomas Jefferson and the accusations that were hurled.
He says you get him fired when you go after
against him. If you actually dignify such ridiculous accusations with a response, then you're dignifying the answer, or the accusation, right? You're saying it has a little bit of credence when you have to blatantly, defend it.
Yeah. I'm going to play this clip, but let me play one more. I think it actually might be over here. Okay, turn that back on, please. Turn it off for me. This really bothered me, and I'm going to play this segment because it really bothers me. What happened in Atlanta, and most thinking people can see that this police officer acted in the right. There's a guy who passed out in the Wendy's drive-thru, drunk. He passed out. He wasn't sleeping. You don't take a nap in the drive-thru.
They made it seem like he was just in a Wendy's parking lot, in a parking spot, asleep, and then cops banged on the window and gave him a sobriety test. If you're in the drive-thru lane, it's called a drive-thru. It's not called a park-thru. So you are driving. And he obviously was intoxicated when he got to the...
But he was obviously so impaired that he passed out in the drive-thru.
Exactly.
I've never heard of that happening. It might have happened once or twice before. But it doesn't happen because people want the food.
Right. Oh, yeah. If you're in the drive-thru for Wendy's, and I like Wendy's,
you ain't gonna fall asleep.
I'm not falling asleep. I'm on the edge of my seat waiting for that food.
The district attorney, Paul Howard Jr.,
charged former Atlanta police officer Garrett Rolfe with murder in addition to 10 other criminal charges. If convicted, Rolfe faces execution. The alleged crime at the heart of it is the shooting of the suspect called Rayshard Brooks. The details of it 2 nights ago. Last Friday, Rayshard Brooks passed out drunk in the drive-thru lane of a Wendy's in Atlanta. Brooks' car was blocking traffic, so restaurant employees called the police. They arrived, Rolfe and his partner. They woke Brooks and they asked him if he had been drinking. Brooks admitted that he had been. Officers then moved forward with a textbook DUI arrest, nothing unusual. But when they tried to take Brooks into custody, Brooks started swinging. He fought the officers to the ground and then snatched a taser from one of them and tried to use it against Officer Rolfe. When Brooks raised the taser to fire, Rolfe shot and killed him. Here's some of the video.
Hey, sir. They hauled in by third party. Be a black Toyota Camry in the unknown.
You're sitting in the drive-thru line here.
Blah, 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 blah. Stop. Very good.
I just had a few drinks. That's it.
How many?
1.5. Like I said, I was into the second cup. I wasn't leaving. I told her, babe, let's go because I'm hungry.
What kind of drinks did you have?
I'm not sure. It's something she ordered. She said top shelf or whatever.
Right.
Just take me home. I'm ready to go.
So you had about 1.5 drinks. You don't remember what kind of drinks it was?
No, sir.
All right.
I really don't.
All right. I think you've had too much to drink to be driving. Put your hands behind your back, boy. Put your hands behind your back.
He had recently been taken out, released from jail for beating his wife and children.
Stop fighting! Stop fighting! You're gonna get tased! You're gonna get tased! Stop! Mr. Ross! Stop! Come on, man! Stop! You're gonna get tased! Mr. Ross! Hands up the taser! Hands up the taser! Hands up the taser! Stop fighting!
Stop fighting. They're telling him the entire time to stop fighting.
So he takes the taser with him.
63.
After the shooting, Officer Rolfe tried to keep Rayshard Brooks alive. He performed CPR on the man he just shot.
Mr. Brooks, keep breathing. Mr. Brooks, keep breathing for me.
Mr. Brooks, keep breathing, Rolfe said. Keep breathing for me. No matter how much you look at these videos or how closely, it's a tragedy every time. The father of 3 girls is dead. The question is, was it murder? Ask yourself, how do you think you would do, regardless of what color you are, if you snatched a cop's taser and tried to shoot him with it? Most likely you'd be dead. No one would march in your memory. No one would burn a building in your name. No one would consider your death controversial, much less a racial act. That's what happens when you attack police officers with their own weapons. Everyone knows that. But in this case, things are very different. Officer Rolfe is facing the death penalty. He's been charged by a DA who's under enormous political pressure to prosecute. The mob wants vengeance now. They've expressed that by burning the Wendy's where Rayshard Brooks died to the ground. They've committed violence. Will they commit more if he's not charged? That has to be weighing on Paul Howard. And not just that. Paul Howard is fighting for his job. Howard is facing a runoff election soon. Howard is also being investigated for sexual harassment and for stealing money from a nonprofit. So Paul Howard has every reason to change the subject and to bow immediately to the mob's demands, and that's what he's doing. During his press conference today, Howard described Rayshard Brooks, the man who went berserk on 2 police officers and knocked them to the ground, as, quote, jovial. Watch Howard's statement here and compare it to...
I'm not going to listen to... You don't need to listen to Paul Howard's statement, the district attorney who's charging that guy, that cop, self-defense with murder. That cop did
not
everything
just murder,
by the
though, the fact,
death penalty.
I want to give you guys a glimmer of hope. Okay? For the officer charged. The Paul Howard guy can save face with his community by pushing for the harshest punishment and the highest conviction. All right? Unfortunately, in our justice system, or in this case, fortunately, you need to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, like murder in the first degree, okay, in order to really convict the person at all. Now, I'm sure he's going to be charged with multiple things, okay? But this highest one that seeks the death penalty, I don't know if it's murder in the first degree, but I think that it probably is. There's no way that a jury will ever convict on that. So Paul Howard gets to look good, and he also understands that this officer is innocent. And so by charging to the fullest extent, he's actually almost doing this guy a favor.
Well, it was crazy because after the day of the charges, Atlanta cops, they call it is hashtag the blue flu. 911 calls did not get answered. The mayor, Keisha somebody, whatever, I forget her last name, she had to come out and say, we're giving you a raise. We need you to uphold your commitment to the community.
I would quit.
Michelle, Heather, thanks so much for coming on. So it does seem like our leaders have kind of given up on the idea of equal justice, something that I think we hired them to defend as the most important thing we have in this country. But have you seen any defend that idea?
We're living through a civilization-crushing failure of our elites, Tucker. This is an absolutely terrifying moment. Across the board, America's elites, whether it's in political class, media, education, have embraced a patently false narrative about systemic police bias. That narrative is easily disprovable by looking at the most basic facts about policing and crime. But by embracing that false narrative, they are undercutting the legitimacy of law enforcement, of our criminal justice system, and in so doing, they are putting thousands more lives at risk. They're putting black lives at risk who will be taken now through unchecked criminal behavior, gang-banging, drive-by shootings when officers back off of proactive policing. We saw this in 2015, 2016. An additional 2,000 blacks were murdered thanks to cops backing off from what I call the Ferguson effect. But we're also putting officers' lives at risk because by so undermining the legitimacy of law enforcement, you're going to increase the type of resistance to arrest that we just saw in Atlanta. Exactly. Because people hate the cops even more. That is going to result in officers themselves escalating their use of force, possibly to lethal levels, and we're going to enter a vicious cycle where both suspects and officers' lives are at risk.
So let me read some comments here. Jim West says it'll be manslaughter. 412 says felony murder committed in the commission of a felony. It's utter nonsense unless a DUI arrest or being punched in the face is a felony. David Harrell says it's a cowardly move. It's a lie simply to appease the vicious mob. Redneck says civilians are just going to have to step up and deal with criminals ourselves, and that is a real threat. That might actually be happening. Eric Kelly says, all I will see now is more crime, no cops. It will be the wild, wild west before laws brought into these towns. Wicked Sykes says he was unresponsive in the drive-thru. Should they have ignored him if he was having a medical episode? That's exactly. A very, very good question.
That's a really good point.
My heart breaks for this situation. Love Liz says the cops should quit and let the cities deal with it themselves. It's not safe for cops anymore. I
was happy that they walked out, honestly.
I think that, a friend of ours said that this kind of temper tantrum that we're seeing, it's almost like it had to happen in order for them to breathe and to be able to see clearly. But anybody that watches that video sees that police officer did not have any malicious intent, and that he did not shoot this guy.
Let me show you guys this. This is kind of a semi-disturbing video. If you guys can watch this, there's a man who comes in, and what I'm showing you is two black cops who shoot a white guy in the back, okay? But they weren't charged with murder, okay? And so this white guy comes in. You're not allowed to move in between the cars while it's running, right? So that was illegal. So the police officers get the guy to go off the subway, and they go to arrest him. Okay?
The female black police officer and a male black police officer.
They follow him, and then they get him. So he then begins to fight arrest. First she tries the pepper spray. Then she tries the tasing. The tasing doesn't work. Then they fire a gun at him. And he starts running. And while he's running, they shoot him. Again, he does not turn around. He does not do anything. They just shoot him. But there was nobody in the streets. Nobody was saying cops are bad. Cops do bad things to people. You never heard of this story, did you? You never heard of it. And I never heard of it. Because it doesn't fit the narrative. And that's why I played it for you guys, so you guys could know. We're going to go back and forth here, but I want to talk to you guys about two of the Supreme Court decisions.
Hang on. 412, this is, I know you're making a joke here, but you're right. It says, don't resist, white or black, whatever. Cops have boom boom that make dead dead.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the deal. Guns are literally deadly weapons. Okay? There's a reason why we see movies where if somebody's holding a gun, right, they can get you to do whatever they want because they may shoot you, right? So even if you're in the right, okay, if a cop has a gun on you, comply. It is the same thing, okay, as a bad guy had a gun on you, okay?
And listen, guys, sometimes it doesn't always work, okay? Cops have shot innocent people. It just happens. It's not right.
That's bad cops that are like actual murderers, but regular cops, okay,
right,
are not going to shoot you by mistake if you are complying, even if you're in the right.
Right.
All right? It's not worth it.
Right. Okay, I don't want to do such a sharp, abrupt change, but these are two big issues that happened this week by the Supreme Court. And this is from the Federalist. Senator Tom Cotton criticizes Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts Wednesday after the court ruled President Trump could not remove the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, the DACA program, created by an executive action by former President Obama. It cannot be the law that what Barack Obama has unlawfully done, no president may undo. Cotton also condemned Justice Roberts' actions as political, suggesting he should run for office if he wants to participate in the political legislation. This is something we talk about a lot here on the show. The Supreme Court was never designed to create new laws. That's why if you want to have Marriage Equality Act, you have to go through our judicial system by people who have votes and are held accountable, and you say this person voted for gay marriage, okay? That's not what happens right now. These Supreme Court justices are legislating from the bench. That's not the idea. The idea is you bring a case to the court. It's only supposed to apply to that specific case. You're not supposed to have these case laws. We have to go back and back and back and find which
What's
judge
ironic
did which
is they're
and which
supposed
judge...
to uphold the Constitution, and the Constitution limits their power and does not allow them to make law.
The Supreme Court is supposed to be a small function.
They love the power of being able to create law.
John Roberts again postures as a Solomon who will save our institutions from political controversy and accountability. If the Chief Justice believes his political judgment is so exquisite, I invite him to resign, travel to Iowa, and get elected. I suspect voters will find his strange views no more compelling than do the principal justices of the court. The 5-4 majority, which was released by the court on Wednesday morning, was written by Chief Justice John Roberts, with Justices Alito, Thomas, Kavanaugh, and Gorsuch dissenting. Cotton's comments echo Trump's opinion on the court, who tweeted Wednesday, "These horrible and politically charged decisions coming out of the Supreme Court are shotgun blasts into the face of people that are proud to call themselves Republicans or conservatives." Okay? The Supreme Court justices tend to go to the Supreme Court and they become incredibly liberal. Okay? We should not... What this does is exposes the judiciary for what it is. An unelected body of people who make laws for us that should never, ever should be. And so if Obama creates DACA by executive order, an executive order is not a law. And so Trump can go and by executive order undo it.
Right.
But John Roberts legislates from the bench. Now, Justice Thomas says in his dissent, today's decision must be recognized for what it is, in an effort to avoid a politically controversial but legally correct decision. The court could have made clear that the solution respondents seek must come from the legislative branch. Instead, the majority has decided to prolong DHS's initial overreach by providing a stopgap measure of its own. In doing so, it has given the green light for future political battles to be fought in this court, rather than where they should rightfully belong, the political branches. Such timidity forsakes the court's duty to apply the law according to neutral principles, and the ripple effects of the majority's error will be felt throughout the system, our system of self-government. Well, and then Donald Trump tweeted out, he says, what this does is it gives me more authority than more authority than I knew I had, but he goes, don't worry, I will use it for good. To have a president be able to make a law and make it go on to the next administration without it going through the legislative branch is pretty crazy. This is funny. I just love this from Babylon Bee. Trump picks Alex Jones as new press secretary.
Oh, come on.
Go ahead, you read it.
That would be awesome. Washington, D.C., after Sean Spicer's abrupt resignation Friday morning, President Donald Trump has chosen InfoWars chief and renowned conspiracy theorist Alex Jones as the new press secretary, the White House announced. The fiery Jones wasted no time in getting in front of the cameras, holding his inaugural press conference shortly after the announcement. I am the new press secretary, he bellowed in his distinct Texas growl at all the reporters present, occasionally taking a handkerchief out of his pocket to dab perspiration from his face. And then, I can't do a Jones, I just cannot do it. He continued, beating his chest like a gorilla. We're coming for you, globalists. 1776 will commence, you wicked, wicked devils, he added before mumbling something about gay frogs. Press Secretary Jones concluded the conference early, dismissing every person in the room after announcing that only InfoWars and Breitbart reporters would be allowed to attend press events from this point forward.
And actually, I know that Alex Jones would love everybody to be there. Yep. So, this was pretty silly today. Jerry Nadler went off the rails by demanding everybody wear masks, and it went crazy. So you're gonna get a 3-minute circus.
That's just what he needs, less oxygen.
I want to announce that, in accordance with what I said this morning,
how is he elected? Who's electing this guy?
Has said that it is imperative for the health and safety of people in this room that members wear masks. I would greatly prefer that all present simply uphold the decorum of the committee by complying with reasonable safety standards that are recommended by the attending physician and are respectful of all the occupants of this room. I have been greatly lenient today. However, I will tell you now that anyone who is not wearing a mask will not be recognized to speak. Period. Who seeks recognition?
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Escobar is next.
Chairman.
Ms. Escobar is next.
Mr. Chairman, a point of parliamentary...
Ms. Escobar is recognized. Ms. Escobar...
Clinton has tried repeatedly to make his point. Repeatedly.
Ms. Escobar has the time.
Mr. Chairman.
No, it's our side. You just had a Democrat speak. It's our turn.
Escobar has the time. Ms. Escobar...
No, she doesn't.
Ms. Escobar has the time.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Escobar has the time.
I think Mr. Liu just spoke. It's the Republicans' turn, and Mr. McClintock has tried now for several minutes to be recognized on a point of order.
There's no point of order, but who seeks recognition to speak?
Mr. Chairman, I seek recognition for a point of parliamentary inquiry.
The gentleman will state his point of parliamentary inquiry.
I would like the chairman to cite the House rule requiring members to wear masks in House proceedings. If we had such a vote, I don't recall it. If we have such a vote, I will vote against it, but I will be happy to abide by it if the House so decides. Until then, I would like you to cite me that rule, since I obviously missed that vote.
The chair's authority to enforce the preservation of order and decorum during committee proceedings derives from the Speaker's enforcement authority under Clause 2 of Rule 1. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 11, the rules of the House are the rules of its committees and the subcommittees so far as applicable. Committee chairs have long been responsible for the enforcement of general decorum in the respective committees. And I am enforcing...
Mr. Chairman, this has nothing to do with...
Oh, yes, it does. And I'm enforcing general decorum. Decorum means, among other things, the safety of the members of the committee.
All right. Well, then, Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. You choose to wear a mask, sir. I do not. I ask you to respect my choice as I respect yours.
It is not your choice to obey the decorum.
Mr. Chairman, I don't yield my time. I consider masks much more effective at spreading panic and much less effective at stopping a virus.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. It's a kangaroo court. I mean, this is so ridiculous. They act like children. I mean, this is not how we imagine our Senate and our Congress. Like, our government should be better than this. This is embarrassing.
Here's a moment, another little White House press secretary moment for you.
Especially as we go into the weekend and we begin to look at some of the news coverage out there, is that I would encourage all of you to cover the protest in the same way that you covered the rally goers. It's really quite something when you look at this extraordinary video by Media Research Center and Newsbusters, where you have multiple hosts on MSNBC, CNN, and CBS boasting about the, quote, massive crowd. I mean massive. Tens of thousands of people, thousands and thousands, up to 200,000 people, they exuberantly exclaim, but then they have grave concerns about the size of the Trump rallies. You have NBC contributors saying social justice over social distancing, but when the president looks to celebrate the accomplishments for minority and communities in this country, our rallies are derided as breeding grounds for coronavirus, while Lawrence O'Donnell celebrates arm-in-arm protests. So I really think that we should have internal consistency here in the way we cover large crowds. We should be guided by science, not cherry-picking science, as I see all too often on the airwaves, especially from CNN.
She walked white.
I think she learned that from Trump.
So there's a Trump rally this weekend in Tulsa, and everybody's saying that Trump's going to be spreading the coronavirus, but they're out there saying, get out there and riot and protest.
Right.
All right, Antifa terrorists just knocked down a statue of George Washington in Portland and lit an American flag on fire on top of it. There goes George.
Oh my gosh.
Sing a song for George.
So, people were actually really, really upset about this. And I am too. But when it comes to their burning of the flag, I think you have to take a little bit of their poison out of it, because they want it to mean something really, really awful. But, you know, when we're retiring flags, we burn them. And there's a very special, beautiful ceremony that takes place when you retire a flag and you burn it. So don't give them the satisfaction of what they're doing being like the ultimate of...
You're watching Antifa's try to make Portland, Oregon into a CHAZ. Did not go over well.
Pallets.
The police weren't having it in Portland, Oregon, so thank goodness for Portland, Oregon. Then you have over here Portland mayor. He is not into an autonomous zone.
Not want an autonomous zone set up in Portland, and I'm watching what's going on in Seattle, and I'm not impressed. I think it's a distraction from the larger movement, and the movement is justice for black people. And I'm not in Seattle, obviously, but what I'm hearing coming out of Seattle concerns me. Armed people walking around in the autonomous zone, people being asked to show their papers and demonstrate where they're from at the entrance to the autonomous zone, businesses potentially being shaken down to be allowed to operate within the autonomous zone. So if you're asking if that's something I support, let me be unequivocally clear. I absolutely do not support that. And I do believe it's a distraction from the larger movement, which is to support and uplift black voices in our community.
Well said.
Well, I guess he knows it's run by little Soy Boy Antifas. You know? It's so cool. It's like, seriously? I have a, let me see if I can find the,
Stuart the Brit says, the pallet companies are making a fortune. Sales are booming.
There's a...
Britbot says, USA and other free nations should make flags flame retardant, which the idiots... Watch the idiots try to burn those. That would be funny. It wouldn't be that difficult. They should make flags. But see, then again, when you're retiring a flag, you're supposed to burn it, so...
So, welcome to CHAZ. Tourism video went viral.
Oh, dear. Wasn't that from last week?
No, it was just, there's another one.
America, sick of your freedoms and rights and security and due process? Well, come on down to CHAZ. Look at all the wonderful things that communism has to offer. Feel safe in CHAZ with strong border security and armed border guards. Live like a good communist in CHAZ housing just like this. You can live in slums. No need to have ambulances in utopian CHAZ. Turn them into housing. No need to buy clothes. Clothes are free in communist CHAZ. Be a good environmentalist by throwing your trash everywhere and expecting capitalist America to pick it up. Artists in CHAZ are free to create art anywhere they want, even on playgrounds for children and historic buildings. You can even create art on bathrooms that capitalist America has donated to CHAZ. However, I wouldn't recommend using these facilities. Instead, just poop in the street. In CHAZ, if you need manure, you can just find it in the street. Feel free to use any drugs you want, anywhere you want. In CHAZ, you can plant gardens and then segregate who can garden in them by their race. That's progress. Make sure you deface minority-owned businesses. Progress! Make sure you threaten to kill cops and then threaten to kill everyone who doesn't agree with you. You better desecrate the American flag. All good communists do it. And guess what? In CHAZ, there's no police. So CHAZ is completely peaceful. No violence ever in CHAZ. Peace and love forever. The best part, in communist CHAZ, you can still use capitalism. It's only 6 dirty capitalist American pig dollars for a hot dog. Or you can just eat food right off the ground. So come on down to CHAZ and find the future leftists want. Yay, communism!
Wow. Now,
it's not even funny.
Hang on, though, because we keep calling it CHAZ, and they renamed their name to CHOP because it obviously has a way better ring to it.
Yeah.
It doesn't really.
No, it doesn't. And in fact, there was another video I had shared where they were getting together and they were trying to go to the next police precinct, and they talked about chopping people's heads off during the French Revolution. So that was that was pretty awesome. Oop, that's not what I wanted. Oh shoot. I hate when messages come up.
That's just our family organizing.
Okay, I need you to bring up. Facebook just keeps opening up the messages. Can I turn that off so they don't pop up?
I wondered about that. No, you can't really.
So bring up the video of the black lady, Beverly so and so.
How far back was it?
I don't know.
Off of your specific Facebook.
I don't know. Yeah, I shared it a couple times. It's the girl with she's wearing the it could be back far, and she's got the poncho on.
Mm-hmm. We didn't show that. You just showed it to me.
No, it's been a lot of things have happened in 1 week.
I see that,
and you can actually bring up a lot of those videos. So keep going.
It wasn't on Twitter, right?
No, it's not.
Here they are.
There she is.
Come on. It's wanting to freeze here. Hang on. Let me get this actually open. Oh, for crying out loud.
I feel like fake news. This is the thing. I know people don't like Trump. I understand that. But let me tell you something. If I had to pick between him and Joe Biden, I'm not voting for Joe Biden. You want to see a bunch of black people go to jail by the next 4 years? Put Joe Biden in. Watch what happens. You want to see black men get killed substantially? Like you've never seen before? Put Joe Biden in and watch what happens. These Democrats, and I'm sorry to say this, I'm not trying to be racist, but they hate black people. These are the same people who fought to keep slavery in. These are the same people who built the KKK. These are the same people who hated us from the beginning. The party is the party of the blacks. The Republican Party is the only party that the black people actually assisted in finding. But all of that history has been torn away by our soldiers while the Confederates were still riding horses. They were not able to get supplies back fast enough, right? So what happened was once slavery was abolished in the South, the people in the South could no longer make their money from slaves. They had to move to the North to work in the industry to produce. And so the people in the North that already had established themselves in the industry moved to the South. And so that's where it was a transfer of people coming from the South to the North and people coming from the North to the South. There was never a big switch. So the same Democrats who hated black people from the beginning are the same ones who hate us now. And they use our cause. How did Black Lives Matter turn into something about LGBTQ? When blacks really don't support that. We're conservative. We're really not about that. Not only that, we don't support abortion. We're about working. This is the black culture. We ain't ever been about that. Not only that, we're not about feminism. No, we're not. Black women marry their husbands and respect their husbands. That's what we're on. We're not on this, I do what I want. We don't do that. That's not our community, and you would understand. I know you understand what I'm saying. We don't do that. But yet these people are hijacking our movement, and the Democratic Party, they're trying to hijack our stuff. No. You want the benefit of Christ, but you don't want Christ. You gotta accept Christ and all of his benefits, not just his benefits without him. There's no Allah, there's no Muhammad, there's no Buddha, there's Jesus. He's the one who has peace.
She's just amazing. You can follow her on Beverly Blevins, I think, is her name.
Yeah,
oh, just so awesome.
And her sidekick, I don't know her name.
So, yeah, I've been sharing her videos. She was the woman who we shared, her and her sidekick. They were the women we showed last week in our Friday show. NBC is facing considerable backlash after pushing Google to demonetize conservatives. NBC News is facing considerable backlash after pushing Google to remove conservative sites from its ad platforms. Kira?
It's probably just Matt.
Trump tweets follow a Senate bill yesterday that aims to stop social media platforms from discriminating against conservative voices by threatening the liability shield they enjoy as neutral platforms that aren't already responsible for the speech on the platforms. The DOJ has pitched in by releasing some guidelines for the senators to follow. Prior to that, Trump signed an executive order staking out his administration's view and interpretation of Section 230 after Twitter decided to affix warning labels to several tweets. Now, they didn't, it was Zero Hedge in the Federalist. And NBC worked with a far-left organization in the UK to try to get Google to not put ads on Zero Hedge in the Federalist. Like, these people, this is cultural Marxism. Shut up your opponent. Don't let them speak. And control all the message of the airwaves coming in and coming out. So, speaking of censorship, it's absolutely hilarious. But Twitter labels Donald Trump's video as manipulated media. So you guys remember seeing this? Well, Donald Trump tweeted it out. And this video cannot... Oh my gosh. The media has been disabled by a response by a report by a copyright owner. And it's labeled as manipulated media. Well, I got to see it last night. And it was CNN. And their headline was, "White racist baby chases black baby." And they had really run up to hug each other. And then the black baby takes off running. And the white baby goes running after him as his friend. And Trump tweeted it out. And they labeled it media. They labeled it as misrepresentative or crazy media. Now they took it down. It was shared by Trump, then goes on to show what actually happened, and the music changes. The two toddlers move toward each other. I just cannot believe. This tweet has been labeled per our synthetic and manipulated media policy to give people more context. You can't make this stuff up, you guys. You cannot make this stuff up. I mean, I guess you can. Good news. Atlanta teenager raises $160,000 for black-owned businesses hurt by protests. 17-year-old teen CJ Pearson, you guys might follow him on Twitter, I do, offered a $10,000 check to the owners of Wilburn Sisters Designs on Thursday, one of many businesses he is helping to save. WSB TV Channel 2's Kristen Holloway spoke to 17-year-old CJ Pearson, who raised a whopping $160,000 for black-owned businesses harmed or destroyed by the ongoing protests. The demonstrations were sparked by George Floyd. Atlanta is one of the hardest hit cities in the U.S. While initial protests began with relatively peaceful demonstration, they just went crazy.
And beyond to help local businesses recover from protests.
We've shown you the destruction in downtown Atlanta during the unrest over the last weeks. Well, Channel 2's Kristen Holloway was there as that teenager delivered a check to one business to help with repairs.
We're excited. We're truly grateful. Janice Wilborn overwhelmed with emotion after 17-year-old CJ Pearson delivered a $10,000 check on Thursday to her retail store, Wilborn Sisters Designs in downtown Atlanta.
But show that Black Lives Matter about supporting these black-owned businesses that were adversely impacted, by these recent events, and not intentionally so. But let's go help them out.
The store suffered significant damage in the civil unrest here in Atlanta after the tragic death of George Floyd. We got a closer look at some of the damage here at Wilborn Sisters Designs. Take a look at the shattered glass here on the door. This door is completely boarded from top to bottom.
Now, CJ Pearson is a conservative. You see, I'd love to see everybody raising money for these businesses.
Boarded up for at least a half a mile. Pearson and the Georgia Association of Minority Entrepreneurs raised more than $160,000 in 1 week. Pearson says the Wilborn's black-owned business is just his first stop of many across the country. Wilborn says this will help out tremendously.
So we'll be teaching here, we'll be using this space for more than just selling clothes. It'll be more of a learning center. As we teach sewing classes, our first project will be making masks.
CJ says he was happy.
And that we put actions behind our words. Posting a black screen isn't enough. We need to go do something.
In downtown Atlanta, Kristen Holloway, Channel.
That's awesome. Love it. I love it. And that CJ Pearson actually made the news in a positive manner. You know. Here's a video.
Well, and back to the earlier when you were talking about the Chick-fil-A guy, what you failed to point out was what we talked about last night, is when someone had said, how about giving me some of your Chick-fil-A stock?
No, that was Lecrae.
Oh, okay. Was that Lecrae?
Yeah, you're going to brush my shoes, but how about you give me some Chick-fil-A stock? And he changed the subject. I ain't giving away my stock. I ain't giving away my company. Are you kidding me? I got a little brush, and I'll brush your shoes, and I'll brush away my white privilege, and we'll all go on after
And that is what we keep saying on our show. And when we've had friends message us and say, we're not getting it, we need to really be caring. And when, we've had friends that are upset at us that we seem kind of mocking at the
Christian
like white privilege people that are just like trying to apologize, like, yes, I do have white privilege and I am listening and I do hear you. It's fine to say all of that, okay? Because you don't have to do anything that requires action or money, okay? Like a literal, your labor is not involved, okay? An honorary shoe shine, okay, does not equal giving somebody, going into communities, giving money.
Yeah, my thing would be like, I will believe you when you pay the mortgage for a single black mom. I'll believe you when you go out and you begin to put your, and you don't put a quantification on it and say, please absolve me of my white privilege while I do this. This is what's so crazy about this, and this is why I mock it, and this is why it makes me so upset. And this is why I get so, I do make fun of people, because if I don't, I'm just going to scream at you. And wouldn't you rather me laugh? A reason I would be so upset is because you have made racism the unforgivable sin. You can't be forgiven for it.
But it's not only
because you are born with it. You're born. It is the first sin.
That's what I was about to say.
It's the only sin.
Aaron, it's original, unabsolvable sin.
Yeah. It's insane. It is so satanic. And that's why I mock it, because it is satanic.
And you know what? It gets me with these Christians that believe this stuff is because the Bible teaches complete opposite of this. The Bible says that without the law, there was no sin. What does that mean? Without the knowledge of knowing that you are doing something wrong, then it's not a sin. Okay? If you mistakenly do something that is wrong and it causes damage to someone, okay, then you should make it up to them, if you know what I mean? But you can't be a sinner. It's not a sin to do it, but they are saying that everyone is inherently racist and it is a sin and you are bad and you need to make up for it.
I explained your little theology there. For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. There was sin before the law. There will be sin.
Okay, well, the Bible says without the law there was no sin.
But that it's a word thing. Okay, it's a word thing because you didn't know that. Okay, you didn't know that to leave your tent when you're menstruating would be a sin. Okay, but the extra things of the law. There is inherent sin. Right. Lying, cheating, stealing. There is sin. There's original sin.
My point is there has to be a knowledge. That's why Adam and Eve ate of the tree of the knowledge
you
of
know
good
what's
and
right.
evil.
You know what's wrong inside of you. Okay.
The dog is shaking the camera.
All right. Here's some good news. Kansas police officers play basketball. Discuss excessive force with teens.
Every day to play basketball. So it seemed like an ideal location for police to get better involved with the community.
This is a thing. This is a positive movement.
Teens are establishing a dialogue that can promote greater community understanding and calling for following the death of George Floyd.
Promote, let's do better, but what are we really doing together? I think it starts with us, and we have to be the leaders and the examples, having more events like this to where we're creating unity in our communities.
Police and ask them hard questions about excessive force. We'll learn to see the kids as having hopes and dreams for a better potential troublemaker. This is the type of change, their sense of community, where police are not viewed as outsiders, but as public servants, a better place to live. John Pepitone.
Bingo. That's what this is all about. And this is what I'm talking about. If this is what you're talking about with Black Lives Matter and getting the police in, I'm all for this. This is righteous. This is good. This is led by the Holy Spirit. This is not designed to overthrow capitalism or the patriarchy or the nuclear family. Okay? And so what the devil started, you can turn it around and do it for good because there are people who are suffering. People who need, one person said, we need more Big Brother programs where, because 75% of kids don't even have a dad in the home.
Right.
So these cops adopt a kid program. Like this, it was a thing. It was kind of moving. And remember when I was a kid, it was a thing. There was a Big Brother, Big Sister programs and things like that.
I don't want to poo-poo on your thing, but in this climate, like no way would I do it. Because you would have to have the power of God, I think. Because they would find a way to falsely accuse you of something.
Well, you don't have to be one-on-one. Do these organizational things. I want to see this.
Yes, the community.
The community things. All right, so this was hilarious. I don't know if you guys heard much about, like, 2 nooses were found in California. And the mayor said 2 nooses were found. Well, let me explain something to you. A noose was found in a tree at Lake Merritt in Oakland, California. These white supremacists sending a message, it is our duty to protect our people by any means necessary. Well, it's not a noose. A guy climbed a rope and he put a rope in a tree for a swing. A swing. It's a swing, not a noose. It was a swing. Well, Libby Schaaf says intentions don't matter.
The Oakland Police Department has turned over the evidence to the FBI. We have to start with the assumption that these are hate crimes. We cannot take these actions lightly. These symbols are symbols of racial violence, and it's incumbent on all of us to have that sensitivity, to have that knowledge.
And that is why I've directed our staff to remove any such symbol of hatred, regardless of the intention of what put it there. What a privilege for those of us that don't feel complete fear and terror when we see a rope in the tree. That is a privilege that so many of our African American residents do not enjoy.
I'm going to mock this lady. Don't tell me I can't.
Amount of anguish, of rage, of fatigue, of grief. And yes, the fact that we had an extremist charged with the murder of Patrick Underwood, an extremist group, the Boogaloos, that is trying to ferment a...
So let me explain something to you.
Oh dear.
Let me bring it up.
Here it comes.
Where is it? Let me see. I got it. It's too many windows up. Where are you, buddy? I got the guy. Here we go. Are you ready? You're not ready. This is Victor Singby of Oakland. Said the nooses found in Lake Marriott were not a symbol of hate. He says the nooses were used to attach a makeshift swing. It's unfortunate that a genuine gesture of just wanting to create a good time got misinterpreted.
You like to climb things, close up that tree, put another rope here, put another swing there. So the children are having a good time with it. Right? There's actually a family, father, mother, and daughter. And he'll host her up in the garden, swing her around, and it, you know, out of the dozens and hundreds and thousands of people that have walked by, no one, you know, has thought that it looked anywhere close.
Out of the hundreds of thousands of people that walked by, ain't nobody thought the swing was a noose. And the mayor says, regardless of the intentions, we must assume that this is a symbol. It is a symbol of hate.
Hang on,
it was
though.
a swing
I'm really confused.
that kids were swinging on.
Wait. Okay, so I don't know. Let me make sure that they can see what we're seeing here. All right, move your head. Let me move my head.
Oh, yeah.
All right, are these the said swings?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
And there's swings on different trees. Yeah.
But, a swing is not going to be over head height. Okay? So if these swings
were just right off the
ground, then you can know unequivocally that they are really grasping at straws here. Okay? They are trying to pull hatred out of a hat. This is the most absurd thing, and we have an African American guy, I'm assuming, that put them up. Or he's just testifying to the fact. But this is, if they were in a tree, which the very first video showed the camera going up into a tree, that would be different.
Yeah.
But if they were an actual swing, then that's ridiculous.
I'm gonna. So CNN has put a fence around CNN. They built a wall.
Oh, so they don't get looted?
Yeah, they've had some attacks. I don't believe I shared this video with you. I shared this video of this woman. Excuse me. When she was explaining how she was held up by a black man. But I did not share this video with you on how she walked through her grocery store.
Look at this. Every grocery store looks like this.
In Minneapolis, I believe.
Every grocery store looks like this. Everything is either on the floor.
Ain't got no they didn't want the celery.
Look at this. Can't even get no fucking food for my kids.
Right, I'm sure there's some curse words.
Look at this. Came in the store to try to buy something. I'm not a thief. Look at this. In my hood, can't even get no food for my kids. Babies need milk. Can't even get nothing for my kids, bro. I feel like an animal, and black people made me feel like an animal. Y'all did this to us. Look at this. Look at this. Look at the store. Look at this. But this is what we're fighting for. This is honoring George Floyd. People who already couldn't feed their kids, now they really
I
can't
don't know
feed
what's
their
all
kids.
over the floor there, but
Look
it
at this.
looks bad.
I am so devastated right now. I am so devastated right now, G.
They didn't steal any cards,
Not
and you're not
okay.
sending cards right now?
For us to have to live like this, we do stupid shit like this all the time, and we so
Hallmark's
black
faces,
proud.
you see.
We so black and proud that we ain't gonna never be honest and be real about what's really going on. Y'all are so wrong for this. You came in your neighborhood and fucked up your shit. I'm not a thief. I'm not coming in this store and stealing nothing. And ain't nobody gonna turn me into no animal or make me feel like a thief. Y'all let them white folks send y'all off once again. Look at all this shit on the floor. Look at all this on the floor. Everything. Everything's on the floor. Tissue. We couldn't even find tissue less than 2 months ago, and now it's on the floor. Look at it. Meanwhile, we got plenty of fruits and vegetables. I'm not gonna pick through this shit.
Wow. It's heartbreaking.
It is. It is. And I've had white Christian people explain that away and say it's no big deal. You know, it's just a thing.
Well, the explanation is that they are so traumatized by white power and white suppression that this is how they react from the trauma.
So back to CHAZ or CHOP. Host a black-only event in a park for Juneteenth. White allies ask for security and money with our little, communist fist there.
Why is that communist fist white?
It's so racist.
Shouldn't it be a brown fist?
You're good. The radical enclave in Seattle known as the Capitol Hill Occupied Protest CHOP.
Well, apparently the white Antifa didn't think that one through.
Had a Juneteenth celebration today that was restricted to black people, while white people were asked to provide security and donations. Tomorrow at CHOP, between 8 and 8, we're having a blackout for Juneteenth. That means black folks on grounds only. We ask that this is respected and observed. This is a white chick posting this with a white face, telling black people what to do. That's what you're going to do. This is how we're going to celebrate Juneteenth for you. Because we're your white allies. And we're just going to tell you what you need to do because we're your best friends. Non-black friends are welcome to protect the borders. The borders. Protect the borders. Do you understand this? The Facebook page for the event, called Juneteenth Blackout at CHOP, details the plans for the 12-hour observance. We're blacking out CHOP. The viral death of black bodies was the catalyst for this current movement, and we need to make sure we remain focused. This means both policy and systemic change to our systems and healing space for the black people. That's exactly what we're creating. A series of events in which we center black healing and community. What we need from our non-black allies are donations of money and supplies and willingness to support by quietly protecting sacred space for black healing. We need allies on the outskirts who are willing to be a physical barrier of protection and to peacefully deter potential interruptions. We will be socially distancing. Please wear masks. If you don't have one, we will have some available to make sure we are protecting ourselves. The schedule for the day includes a grief ritual and community art healing. There seems to be no formal acknowledgement of the significance of June 19th, namely that it marks the moment of in 1865 after the Civil War, when slaves in Texas were informed that they had been liberated more than 2 years earlier as a result of President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. It was a white guy. And white people freed the slaves. Do you understand what the Civil War was? Do you understand the white people in the North? And I do feel sorry for people living in the South. Because there's a lot going on in this whole war between, and it is paint people in the South as and here's the thing. Right after the Civil War, there was a lot of healing. They were like, okay, we're America again. We need to forgive. What you never see in this movement is any sort of forgiveness. There's no end. There's no forgiveness. Oh, I'm sorry, and you move on. My mom always says, you say you're sorry, you move on, you forgive. And the Bible says, this is how you know it's satanic. Because there's no forgiveness. The Bible says, my brother sins against me, how many times do I forgive him? Well, 7 times 70. No forgiveness here. And I guess I'll end with the video talking about talking and the space and I think this sounded Wretched. This guy called Wretched, and he really does try to make a moment.
Oh yeah, that guy's great.
To do what the people are saying is listen. But and Bodie does talk about a couple of his incidences and he does talk to his kids differently about the cops. I'm not saying that there isn't any conversation to be had, but listen to his response when he's asked this question.
Racial relations and those conversations that are happening outside of the church have made their way inside of the church, and we have got.
This is from April this year.
You need to hear the story of black people in America, and it will change your tune, how you view the whole racial landscape, and how we in the church go about fixing it. Now, at the moment, I'm less interested in the social justice specifics at the moment, but I want to listen. If I'm being told by many voices that I will be affected and changed by hearing stories from people who have experienced, black people who have experienced what white people have not in this country, I want to hear those stories because I want to learn. What has always made, I think, some of us a little gun-shy is it feels like maybe there's an agenda behind the stories, or maybe I can't trust the source of the stories. Bodhi, I trust you. And so I want to hear from you. Explain to me, a white man, what is it like to be a black man in America, 21st century?
Well, you know, as you were saying that, here's what I was thinking, and as you were saying, you know, I trust you, and you know, you want to hear from me, I could hear people out there who are doing two things simultaneously. And when I say people out there, I mean people who would be advocates of this, right? We need dialogue, and we need to hear one another's stories, right? You need to hear black people's stories. On the one hand, they're hearing you say that, and they're going, yes, you need to hear black people's stories. And then you're pointing to me, and you're saying, okay, I want to hear it. And some of those same people would be going, no, not his. Because I don't qualify, because I don't have the right worldview. This is what you have to understand. That whole idea is predicated on something else, and that is that there is a black story, right? There are elements of that story. When you hear people telling, you know, their stories, you hear certain elements of the stories.
Pause right there.
They put the
Ben Patterson wants to know, who are these men? If it was mentioned, I missed it. So the white guy is, I forget his name. He's a radio show host called Wretched. He's a Christian guy. He's actually really spot on a lot of things he says.
Funny.
And he's really funny. And then we have Vodi Bakum on the left, Dr. Vodi Bakum, who Leah has presented to us on the show here, or introduced us to.
Follow the links in the description. You put it in the description to his videos on social justice, cultural Marxism, and ethnic Gnosticism. And I listened to all of them. I listened to these three this morning and last night, and I was blown away by the way he puts things in such a really good Christian worldview and not a black and white worldview. He says that in, I think it was Rwanda, where you had two different black ethnicities warring against each other, right? And there was an ethnic genocide. Yeah. And he said, people on the outsider said, how they look the same to me. Okay, how could they have an ethnic genocide? And he said this. He goes, the difference between them, it's almost the same difference between us. Our DNA, we're humans. If we can't, we can procreate. We're the same. He has more melanin than I do. But DNA, we're human. And when you recognize that all are sinners, all are fallen, and we all need Christ, but Christ reconciled us together. Christ already reconciled. There's already racial reconciliation under Jesus. We just have to walk that out. And he goes and he walks a really great line between there are stories and people have been racially profiled, but that's not everybody's story.
Right. Well, you would think that wildcats and wolves are really, really close. And you made a really good point when you said we can procreate, okay? They would have us believe, because the people that are having us believe this actually are racist.
There's such a
huge difference between us and African Americans that we can't even procreate. It's like wolves and wildcats. They're totally, totally different, okay? We are the same species, okay?
Right.
It is not wildcats and wolves out there.
Right, and so when he talks about this and he gets down, what I took away from when he was talking was that Vody would care about me, could be my pastor, could be my mentor, could be a minister to me. He's an older Christian man, okay? He cares about people, and he says, I don't want you to look down on me. I don't want to be the token black guy, because he in one of his things, there's a famous Southern Baptist preacher who said, I want to make racial reconciliation, and they're trying to make church plants. And he said, well, if I have a white guy who is an 8 and a black guy who's a 7, he goes, well, give me the 7. But if he's a 6, that's tokenism. And Bodie says, I know that he didn't mean to be racist, but that is racist. And it is tokenism. And he says, with affirmative action, because he goes, my whole life, now I'm going to be looked at as the guy who is here because of the color of my skin, and I'm just a little bit below white people. I'm the 7. And I don't want that. And he went and he got another degree in Oxford because he felt that if he got that, it wouldn't be because in America he got a token doctorate or a token degree.
All right, let's finish. It's good.
And not as the member of a group. I think it's just as grievous for you. Look, what do racists do? What's the problem that racists have? The problem that racists have is that they categorize and generalize, right? And then they castigate people based upon the group to which they belong, because of they've categorized that group and generalized that group, right? Well, now what we're doing is we're saying you have to stop that. Okay, fine, we stop that. Then what's the alternative? The alternative is to listen to our story. Well, wait. The only way it can be our story is if we categorize and generalize. Isn't that what got us in trouble in the first place? So we need to hear the story of people, but we need to hear the broader story of history. And I think one of the reasons that some of these things are sort of catching on is that people are recognizing that there's a lot of history that has been withheld. There's a lot of history that hasn't been emphasized or understood. One of the things that that we as a homeschool family have been able to do is really to sort of shape and fashion the things that we emphasize as it relates to history.
And he goes on to say, listen, I do emphasize black people in history that maybe white kids don't hear, but my kids read Mein Kampf. My kids read Origins of Species. My kids have a broad range of history. And the problem is that you're just viewing this as was it Tim Kaine who said, America didn't inherit slavery, America created slavery, which is literally what they're teaching kids. Like, there has never ever been slavery, nobody ever has been oppressed ever in history, that it's always, and it's cultural Marxism. That's what this was, and on Sunday I'm going to share with you again a clip I think I shared with you once from Douglas Murray, he's UK, on cultural Marxism. And these are really important terms for you to understand. The intersectionality. What is social justice? Social justice does not mean what you and I would think it would mean because we're rational thinkers. It means redistribution of wealth from the from the elite, which is white men, to everybody else who is on some sort of section of the intersectionality of oppression. And it is a dividing of people. So now when I go into the grocery store, I see black people, I see Mexican people, but like now it's like, ooh, black. It's like literally like black, black, black. What am I supposed to do? Just take a knee in front of them? That's I want to treat people. See, this is what color. We're not color blind, as in we don't see the color of flowers, right? But you don't come up. We're colorblind in that we treat all flowers the same, in that we might want to all put them in a vase on our mantelpiece, but we don't go and take the daisy and we beat them over the head with a baseball bat. Okay? So when I want to treat everybody the same, that's what it means. The term colorblind is not really accurate.
Right.
Okay? We want to treat everybody with the same level of honor and respect. And what Vody really emphasizes is making personal relationships. I hear your story, you hear my story. We all take it through the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that's the idea of this is that I want you guys to walk away with it. And I hope YouTube doesn't censor us for talking about that this way, because it's so powerful. What we're talking about, actually there's one more video you could play if you want to bring it up from my Facebook of the black guy talking to the medical workers and asking them. The Black Lives Matter movement, and I know it's repetitive to say it, if they care to 1,876 black babies are aborted every day. 75% of black children do not have fathers in the home. 7,500 black crime homicides. When a white police officer kills a black man, last year it happened 10 times. 8 times it was probably justified. 2 times it probably was. One time it probably wasn't, and one time it definitely wasn't with Breonna Taylor. Okay, it was a horrible situation. But you don't care about black lives. You are using them, and the one thing that could get people riled up, okay, to and while you're bringing that up,
I'm trying to. It's frozen.
It's frozen. Progressive racism, and this is something I want to do a whole story on. And I know this is a lot on my very last second on my show, but you need to understand where this stuff comes from. Cultural Marxism, progressivism, its foundation in America goes back to Woodrow Wilson. And if you want to fix this thing, you get rid of the Federal Reserve. I'm telling you, you got to get rid of the Federal Reserve. 100 years ago, Woodrow Wilson brought Jim Crow to the North. Woodrow Wilson was a Democrat. FDR was a racist, and he was a Democrat. And who does AOC? We want the New Deal. Lyndon Johnson he said the N-word more times than I have, for sure. Okay? Woodrow Wilson, I've done a whole thing on how he was a patsy, how he was sick, how he was kept away from everybody. Keep going. You should find it. But it's in there. He had been inaugurated on March 4th, 1913. At a cabinet meeting on April 11th, his Postmaster General, Albert Burleson, suggested that the new administration segregate the railway mail service. And the Treasury Secretary, William G. McAdoo, would soon become Wilson's son-in-law, chimed in to signal his support. Wilson followed their lead. He had made a bid for the African American vote in 1912. And he had attracted the support of figures like W.E.B. Du Bois, but as he put it at the meeting, he made no promises in particular to the Negroes except to do them justice. Burleson's proposal he welcomed, but he wanted the matter adjusted in a way to make the least friction. Segregated the mail service. Today, self-styled progressives want with considerable abandon to label as racist those who object to their attempts at social engineering. They will do well to rein in their rhetorical excuses and curb their enthusiasm. Excesses for the administrative state. For the progressives of yesteryear, on whom they model themselves, really were racist in the premise and proper sense of the term. And as formulating public policy, they were true to their principles. In the late 19th and 20th centuries, ordinary Americans may generally have been in the grips of ethnic prejudice of one sort or another. The progressives of that time were not, however, ordinary men, and they knew it. Like their successors today, they dominated Americans' universities. With some justification, they thought of themselves as the intellectual elite, and with rare exceptions, they enthusiastically embraced eugenics and racial theory. That the these racial prejudices of their contemporaries were grounded in the fact that they took to be truth taught by science and being devotees of rational administration to the exclusion of all other concerns. They insisted that the public policy conform to the dictates of new racial science. Wilson, our first professional president, he was a professor, was case in point. He was a very model of a modern progressive, and he was recognized as such. He prided himself on having pioneered the new science of rational administration, and he shared the conviction dominant among his brethren that African Americans were racially inferior to whites. With the dictates of social Darwinism, if you guys have ever read The Descent of Man, you would know that Charles Darwin, he was a racist, and he used science for it, and evolution should be the Darwin anything close. Here's the thing: if you want to get rid of real racists, you've got to take down Darwinian statues. You've got to burn evolutionary books, because whether they tell you this or not, black men are inferior in evolution and in Darwinism. But God created one human race at one time. Hello, can I get an amen?
Amen.
Okay, we're going to play this and we're going to be done for the show. The African Americans were racially inferior to whites, according to Woodrow Wilson and the progressives at that time. Margaret Sanger's, with the dictates of the real KKK, the dictates of social Darwinism and the eugenics movement in mind. In 1907, he campaigned in Indiana for the compulsory sterilization of criminals and the mentally retarded. And in 1911, while governor of New Jersey, he proudly signed into law such a bill. And that guy, everything that he did should be undone. And the first thing that he did was the bankers got him in, and he created a Federal Reserve. And with that, he became the biggest criminal banker in history. And the government has been printing out fake dollars, and we have wars and wars and wars, and we dead people because of this Federal Reserve. Okay. This is all related to this. So while governor of New Jersey, he proudly signed this into law. He was a Woodrow Wilson, Federal Reserve creator, income tax creator. Income tax is racist. Prior to the segregation, that's what I'm telling y'all. Stop turning over Columbus. He ain't got nothing to do with you. No income tax. No Federal Reserve, everything connected to FDR, they're all racist. Undo it all. Medicare, racist. Social Security, racist. I'm telling you, it has racist origins. If Columbus has to be knocked over, these things have racist origins. Do you not understand it?
Our viewers understand.
Prior to the segregation of the civil service in 1913, appointments had been made solely on merit, as indicated by the candidate's performance on the civil service examination. Thereafter, racial discrimination became the norm. Photographs came to be required at the time of application, and African Americans knew they would not be hired. Woodrow Wilson, Federal Reserve creator, income tax creator, racist to his very core, and all the men around him who decided that they wanted the Federal Reserve, this was a racist thing. They're evil. Evil, evil, evil. And down with racism, I'm with you. I'm with you. Everything that has connected to racism, down with it. There goes the Federal Reserve. There goes the income tax. And I'll be like, Martian, hand to hand with you people. I'll black out my name. I'll do whatever you want. Get rid of Federal Reserve and income tax. And I am with you when we get rid of real racist policies. Okay? The existing workforce was segregated. Many African Americans were dismissed. In the Postal Service, others were transferred to the dead letter office, where they had no contact with the general public. Those who continued to work in municipal post office labored behind the scenes, out of sight and out of mind. When the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People and the National Independent Political League objected to the new policy, Wilson, a Presbyterian elder who was nothing if not high-minded, vigorously defended it, arguing that segregation was in the interest of African Americans.
We're hearing that now.
For 35 years, segregation in the civil service would be public policy. It was only after Adolf Hitler gave eugenics and scientific racism a bad name that segregation came to be seen objectionable. If Wilson's new policy encountered little opposition, it was because a change of sentiment had taken place. Jim Crow had not been the norm before 1890, even in the Deep South. As C. Vaughan Woodrow noted nearly 60 years ago in The Strange Career of Jim Crow, it became the norm there only when it received sanction from the racist progressives who went to the North. You guys, they switched. The Southern guys, the slave owners, they did go to the North. They went to the cities. And that's why these Democrat strongholds, the Democrat Party has to be totally obliterated. They are literally the party of slavery. Hello. Okay? Their influence was profound and pervasive. In 1900, E.L. Godkin, founder and longtime editor of The Nation, saw the handwriting on the wall. In the pages of that journal, he lamented that the Declaration of Independence no longer arouses enthusiasm. It is an embarrassing instrument which requires to be explained away. The Constitution is said to be outgrown. Those who once boasted that it had secured for the Negro the rights of humanity and citizenship now listen in silence to the proclamation of white supremacy and make no protest against the nullifications of the 15th Amendment. Wilson championed the trend identified by Godkin. In his presidential campaign in 1912, he told his compatriots, "We are in the presence of a new organization of society. Our time marks a new social stage, a new era of human relationships, a new stage setting for the human life, drama of life, and the old political formulas do not fit the present problems. They read now like documents taken out of a forgotten age. What Thomas Jefferson had once taught is now, he contended, utterly out of date. It is what we used to think of as old-fashioned ways of life, and was very simple." Above all, Wilson wanted to persuade his compatriots to get beyond the Declaration of Independence. That document did not mention the questions of our day, he said to his countrymen. It is of no consequence to us. He regarded it as an eminently practical document, meant for the use of practical men, not a thesis for philosophers, but a whip for tyrants, not a theory of governments, but a program of action. For the rights of individuals celebrated in that document, and for the limits on the scope of government implicit in its celebration of those particular rights, he had no use. They were, he recognized, an obstacle to rational administration of the very sort exemplified in his subsequent segregation of the civil service. For similar reasons, Wilson was hostile to the constitutional provisions intended as a guarantee of limited government. The separation of powers, the balances and checks, the distribution of authority between nation and state, distinguishing the American Constitution, he regarded as an obstacle to the formation and pursuit of rational public policy. Government, he considered not a machine, but a living thing, accountable to Darwin, not to Newton. Do you understand this, man? Nothing.
Are you going to read the whole article?
Yeah, but it's almost done. Nothing of that sort could, he believed, have its organs offset against each other as checks and live. Its health was dependent upon the quick cooperation of these organs, their ready response to the commands of instinct, intelligence, blah, 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 blah. Today's progressives eschew social Darwinism and pseudo-scientific racism espoused by their intellectual forebears, and they oppose racial segregation and sterilization of criminals and the mentally retarded. But they are no less confident in their own righteousness than were the progressives of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. And they have no more respect for the rights espoused in the Declaration of Independence, for limited government, and for constitutional forms than they did their predecessors. And this is what I'm talking about. The people are really racist. And as Michelle brought up the video, we will end with this black man who did more in 1 minute than I could in my whole life. It's beautiful. Just kidding.
You gotta rewind it here.
This is what we call chutzpah. Go on and on about what
lives matter, or just some black lives? The black lives killed by black men matter, right? Yes? The black babies killed in the abortions clinics matter, right? Thought so. The black officers killed by that bastard in Minnesota, that matters too, right? Okay. But the black babies that are killed in the abortion clinics don't matter, do they, medical people? Do their lives matter? Does the future of our black babies matter? Huh? What's up? What's up? Awful quiet now, aren't they? It's okay if we kill them in the womb, right? But you have a problem when you don't seem to really have a problem when we kill them on the streets. Yes, well, we know they're the same issue. If we don't respect the lives of our unborn children enough to save them and fight for them, our lives mean nothing once we're born.
That's so good.
So powerful, and obviously that's a black guy. I don't know who he is, but more power to him.
Great show.
I was a little haphazard, a little all over the place, and went a lot longer than I expected. Those Vody clips were trying hard to get them together.
It's good. And I think that you introduced us to somebody. You guys can, I do have at least one of the links in the description.
Vody Buckham.
All you got to do is just put his name in YouTube and you will come up with a bunch of videos.
Social justice, cultural Marxism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thank you guys for being here. Let's talk about Father's Day. So, one of our family members is going to be out of town, but the other one wants to come just at like our afternoon. So, we may or may not have a show on Sunday.
Okay.
I don't know. I honestly don't know what the plan is for that. I will try to schedule something and put it in on, like, you know how I set this show up a half hour early? I can do that like days early, but let me get with our family and figure it out. If we had to do an evening show on Sunday, I know those in the UK and other countries won't be able to be there live, but we might try to do that. So, Redneck had asked for a Bible study this evening. I was working on this Bible study that I do want to do next today, but praise report is that we are working again, and we're actually pretty busy right now, and we're doing a lot of projects. So Leah still has a pet visit to do this evening, at least one, and I've got we have a dog here, and I still have to make dinner, so not gonna make it to another Bible study tonight, but hopefully this coming week we'll be able to go. We're gonna do Acts chapters 6 and 7 together, so it'll be a long study. So we'll see you on Sunday, hopefully, but probably not at 1. I don't know what time it will be. But we love you guys. Streaky Bacon says, Michelle, if Leah can do an impersonation of a Chinese person, I will forgive you for not being here on Sunday. Why is that? You asked for that at the start of the show.
Why do you want it? Oh, do you want it? Hello? We will say.
Oh my gosh.
We have P.O. Box 1-7. Milford, Ohio 45150.
Donna Terry wants to know if affirmative action is racist. I think it is.
Okay,
I think it is.
It's a long story. We don't have time to go into that right now.
Okay, my short is, I think it is. So, and we're probably going to walk this dog too at some point. So we love you guys. God loves you. God bless. Remember, it's not just a conspiracy theory if it's actually the truth. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. Please leave your comments after the video processes. I really do enjoy reading them. Gonzalez says, affirmative action is racist. It judges people on their skin color and not their character. Exactly.
Thank you for
Tim Smith says, yes, Donna Terry, I experienced it in the 60s and 70s. By definition, it is. They all kind of are, everybody's saying yes, it is.
Thank you guys for being here.
And your comments. I was reading the comments on Periscope and Facebook, so thank you guys for being there as well. I'm sorry I didn't have more of a chance. Leah was on fire, so fitting in the comments today didn't really happen, but please
I'm going to try to bring up
the
comments on my
after,
because I never get to see them.
After the show processes, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, we want to read them. So,
yeah.
We love you guys. God loves you, and God bless. Remember, it's not just a conspiracy theory.
If it's the truth, and happy Father's Day to all you fathers out there.
And happy Father's Day to all of you fathers out there. Very special day, and we are very thankful.
We need you. Be a good dad.
Fathers are the cornerstone of our society and of fixing this problem that we're seeing right now.
Be a good dad.
So, all right, bye guys.
I was called